Okay, so let me start this all over again, shall we? Shall we? So my name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. We do national IC support group meetings. I am the national IC support group leader. I have been a support group leader for 25 years and counting. Starting here with a small group in California that very quickly in the first year grew to one of the biggest national groups, international groups, to be quite honest. So now we work with, the IC Network works with anywhere from 100,000 to 200,000 patients a month, depending upon what's happening. So we started streaming about a year ago because I have one goal: to make you so strong, so knowledgeable, so incredibly informed that no one can ever mess with you again. And it's stunning to me the number of phone calls I get from patients who continue to be abused by medical care providers who simply do not believe them, and family members who don't believe them. But it really, honestly, it's the medical care providers, the doctors who, despite you having videos of your hydrodistension showing that your bladder is damaged, say there's nothing wrong with your bladder. The doctors who say, hey, well, blood in your urine's normal, even if you're passing blood clots. Yeah, right. The doctors who say this is an incurable bladder disease. It is not. It is not. If you've been diagnosed with interstitial cystitis recently, you may have had people telling you this was an incurable bladder disease. But what we have been doing now in the last 5 or 10 years is something called subtyping. And in subtyping, what we're doing is acknowledging the diversity in the IC patient population, because not everybody's the same. Some people have bladders that look like bloody hamburger. Others have completely normal bladders, both diagnosed with IC. Are they the same? Absolutely not. For some people, and guys, if the sound is weird, let me know. Hopefully you can hear me well. Some people have frequency urgency, others only have pain. Are they the same? No, different nervous systems. And when you look at how patients' symptoms began, that's where you really see the diversity in this patient population. Because for some people, IC begins after chemotherapy. Well, for others, IC begins after having a baby. For some people, IC begins after a bladder infection. Well, for other people, IC begins after menopause. And so what doctors and researchers now, really at the upper echelon, and I just really want to say to you guys, now listen, you're going to hear stuff from me today that your local doctor may not know, because they don't read journals like I do, and they haven't sat on the US Army IC research panel like I have. So I'm going to be saying some things to you that when you say to your doctor, like, do you know about the subtypes? He's going to go, no, what's that? Or she's going to go, no, what's that? And you have to embrace your role a bit as an educator, because that is what happens to every IC patient anyway. Doctors simply don't have the time to go learn about stuff. They don't go to the conferences necessarily to take a class on IC. They go to the conferences maybe once every 5 or 10 years. They might not know that the American Urology Association has new guidelines on IC. They may not know about the latest breakthroughs with the fact that some IC patients have an overgrowth of fungus in their urine. They just simply don't know. So again, my job with you is to try to broaden your horizons here. I want to teach you as much as I can so that when you walk into your doctor's office, you can have a calm, directed conversation with your doctor as we seek to understand and unravel the mystery of your pelvic pain, because every IC patient is indeed a mystery. And part of that mystery is figuring out what variation of IC you might have. And that's where, Facebook and groups online can be very, very confusing, because you're going to read stories from other patients that make no sense to you. Like, a patient might really do well with the therapy that's not helped you at all. It's like, what? Why? Why are we different? Or you may read the story of a patient who is not getting better, and you may worry that you're never going to get better. But what you may not know is this person has a completely different subtype of yours than you. And so context matters. Context matters. Every patient is an anatomical mystery to be solved. Want to give you some updates. For those of you who didn't know, but I think most people know now, the big fire in California started in my county. Uh, 1 million people went without power. Somebody wrote hilarious. Hey guys, please, please, please do not mention doctor names if you have something negative to say publicly, because that would be libel or slander. Okay. So if you have an issue, you have to say privately, not publicly. All right. So for the person who just made a comment about a doctor, I'm sorry, I have to hide that. It is hidden now. Okay, so the big fire in Northern California started in my county. 1 million people lost their power about 2 weeks ago. We've lost our power 4 times now in the last month as they sought to prevent fires. And for those of you who are fans of Frontline on PBS, there is an excellent thing that was released last week on the Paradise Fire. And I would really encourage you to watch it because these are mega firestorms now. These are not little brush fires. These are terrifying 80, 100-mile-an-hour wind-driven fires. I didn't sleep for 5 nights. Yeah, this is what you do. They turn off the power. When you lose the power, you lose your phones. You lose your cell phone. Some patients lost their some people lost their landlines. And then you just sit and wait, and you're up all night. You're dressed in your street clothes. Your car is packed, and you watch the sky because these fires move so quickly. The fires can move up to 80 football fields in a minute. And so even though the fire the first 2 nights was that way, about 10 miles, by the third night, it was that way by 4 miles. And it was moving westerly, right? So anyway, it was a nightmare. I'm still exhausted. Honestly, I've had a headache every day, even though we're back and even though we have power. And I've returned 120 messages from various IC patients calling the IC network. We've been back for a week. We just started shipping again last Wednesday in the IC network store because the cell phone towers burned and the internet towers burned. So I want to thank everybody who is sending us really nice supportive messages and who are thinking about me and my family and my sister and my nephews and the 300 people who lost their homes this time. Please, please, please go to PBS, Google Frontline PBS and watch their show on firestorms because it's going to happen more regularly everywhere. Everywhere. This is climate change in action, and being in the middle of it is exhausting and terrifying. And I'm just going to say one thing to you. When you are in the middle of a firestorm, you're not only looking for flames and a pink sky or a red sky coming your direction. You're monitoring your evacuation. How do we get out? How do we get out? Well, we couldn't go north because freeway was closed. We couldn't go west because they thought the fire was going to burn all the way to the ocean. Mandatory evacuations. Police were blocking everything. Couldn't go south because 250,000 people were trying to evacuate on the freeway. It was a standstill. So my goal was to go east, down Highway 12 in the Sonoma Valley. So here I'm kind of networking with other people. We're just trying to make sure it's open. I've got my elderly parents. How do I keep them safe? And the first 2 nights, my evacuation route is solid. The third night, 4 a.m., we get the emergency alert, mandatory evacuation. I'm laying on my living room couch, fully dressed. I pull my boots on. I move a couple of things around in our go bags, and then I look at my evacuation route. Holy shit. I was blocked on the east by a new fire. Blocked every direction. I'm not lying. every direction. So, if you see wrinkles, that's why we made it. And I'm really, really grateful for the tens of thousands of firefighters. I think we had, I don't know how many firefighters we had. You go by my fairground, there were 5,000 trucks sleeping overnight. So grateful for the first responders who came in and kept everybody safe and who fought these fires for us. Okay. So, you know, the now people tell me not to get political. I'm going to get political for a moment. Oh God, I want to swear so bad. The idiot in the White House said that he was cutting off all fire aid to California because he blamed the fires on us. He said it was bad forest management. Okay, these aren't forest fires, guys. These are grass fires. They didn't burn in a forest at all. And the irony of ironies, you want to know, is that 97% of the freaking forests in California are managed by the federal government. So I'm a little pissed off about that right now. We're all pissed off about that right now. We have just been through a terrifying week. And they tell us they're going to cut off our fire aid? Yeah. Until you've lived through it, you don't know. You just don't know. You watch that PBS documentary on the Paradise Fire, you'll know what we lived through in 2007. You'll know what it's like to drive away, to see flames coming up behind you, and the roads are stopped because too many people are trying to leave. This is terrifying. So please, there you go. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. I needed that little vent, and I apologize if I offended anybody. But to cut off any state from fire aid is cruel, especially when it's not even our fault. Okay. Deep breath in, out. Oh, wait, I just breathed in when I was supposed to breathe out. Okay, hold on. In, out. One more time. In, out. I don't ever want to go through that again. Oh, God, guys. I don't ever want to go through that again. I mean, if it were just me, it'd be fine. I could get in my car and go. If I needed to, I could go stand in the middle of the river. But I got a 96. My dad's going to be 97 on Monday, tomorrow. 97 and a 90-year-old. I'm telling you, my stress level is over the top. Okay. Well, anyway, that's enough about me. How are you? How is life? Anybody flaring? Anybody have any new questions? Let's see what we can do for you today. Carmen says, hello, icy sisters and brothers. Hi, Cher. Julianne says, I have frequency, urgency, and pain. I'm sorry to hear that, hun. So the question, Julianne, is what subtype are you? Do you know about the IC subtypes? We've got 5 core fundamental subtypes. Hello, Anne. Hi, Deborah. Hi, Christine. Hello, Heidi. Heidi says, Dr. Peter said I look good for not having estrogen all these years. He didn't see a problem with the tissue. Well, Heidi, listen, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. That's exactly what my OBGYN said. When your estrogen levels drop, your bladder's ability to defend itself is weakened, just like Your vulva gets dry and your vagina gets dry. So does your urethra and so does your bladder. So, the good news, maybe you've got more residual estrogen than other people and you're not in extreme estrogen atrophy like I am, but it is there. It is happening. Every single woman goes through it. Unless you have it's just life. Cher says, some doctors get mad when you advocate yourself. Oh, hell yeah. Lisa says, I still have Candida glabrata. Is it possible this can be making my vulva vaginal area so red and raw? Girl, yeah, hell yeah. I had a Candida glabrata infection for 2 freaking years. And it was burrowed into my vulva. I think I shared, you guys, we've talked about this before. We now know through our own National Institutes of Health that many I see patients having flares actually are having fungal infections in their urine, in their bladder, and in their urine. And so the question is, what kind of fungus is it, and why are we more prone to fungal infection? Candida glabrata is the candida that is showing the highest dynamic rate of antibiotic resistance, if I remember correctly. And I got my Candida glabrata infection 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It was after Dr. Fugusato. How the hell long ago was that? I was the poster child for yeast infections at my local Kaiser Permanente OBGYN because I would go there every month or every 2 weeks and just crying. My vulva was screaming on fire. And it was my OBGYN who did a microscopic exam. He looked at the Candida underneath a microscope, and Candida glabrata is known for being very stemmy. It has, fungus is often little round circles, but remember it's a plant. And so Candida glabrata kind of has stems and then round circles at the top. And so he was able to identify the Candida glabrata. But so the question is where was it? Where was my Candida glabrata? I kept thinking it was vaginal because that's what we were doing. I mean, he was doing vaginal swabs and yet what that didn't explain is why did I keep getting it over and over and over again? And Lisa, it was burrowed deep into my vulva. And we found that at urgent care. And the mistake that I made is that while they were giving me extended diflucan, I wasn't using the topical nystatin at the same time. I thought diflucan killed everything, and it doesn't. You don't get enough good blood flow on the vulva for the diflucan to get there in concentration to kill the bacteria the yeast or the fungus burrowed into the vulvar tissues. At least that's what my OBGYN said to me. And so I had to get back and use a much more aggressive topical program, not with monostat, because that Candida glabrata was resistant to all of that. We ended up doing Miselex. I think it was Miselex and nystatin. And then they even 3 or 4 times over those 2 years coated my tender bits with gentian violet, which burned like hell, to kill the yeast that was living on my vulva. So why was it burrowed into my vulva? The answer is I was sitting on a hot chair cushion. It was the heat. If you give yeast heat and sugar and a warm environment, yeast prospers. I was sitting on a heated chair cushion here in my office for about 2 months before it started, and I created the perfect environment for Candida. Yeah, they did find it at urgent care. I mean, I thought I had a ruptured ovarian cyst when I went in. A bawling my eyes out, going, it's right here, it's right here. They immediately pulled out the sonogram. OBGYN takes a look. It's like, no, it's not. He was sure it's not your ovary. Then he put me up in the stirrups, took a look. My vulva was bright freaking red. And then when he looked closely, he goes, girl, I can see the yeast burrowed into your vulva. Do you want me to take a picture of it for you? and he could see it. It was fascinating. And I just didn't, when you think yeast infections, you think vagina, you don't think vulva. It was so freaking weird. So Lisa says, my doctor is assuming the Candida glabrata is resistant to diflucan, so has had you on amphotericin B and boric acid. Was this before? No, Lisa, this was after the antibiotics with Dr. Fugazato. I got the Candida glabrata infection from doing the Fugazato antibiotic protocol for IC. Are you using any topicals at all? Oh, yeah, it was definitely antibiotic. It was antibiotic induced combined with heat at the same time. It was just like, the perfect storm of things to do to create the perfect drug resistant fungal infection. Hello, hello, Vera from Belgium. It's very nice to meet you. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Deborah. Hello, Karen. Hi, Tamara. I just hid one comment from that person can still see and their friends can still see, but will be out of the transcript. Teresa says, do research before letting any doctor do surgery. I'm a double amputee due to a horrible so-called doctor who left you. Wow, hon, I'm so sorry. If I could give you a big giant hug, I would. I'm so, so sorry. You should, guys, whenever you feel like you've been harmed by a doctor, you can file a complaint with your state medical board and have them investigate, and that would be reasonable. I know of one doctor who harmed an IC patient who is in jail now. Turned out he did it to a bunch of different people. So, Teresa, make sure you file with your medical board. Molly says, hello from icy cold Winnipeg, Canada. Ooh, yeah, man, seriously. Molly says, let her fly, let it fly, Jill. Hon, I can't do that. There's something called liability. I can't let these meetings descend into bitch sessions about doctors by name. I would destroy my reputation with the medical community as well too. I mean, private correspondence, it's up to you, but publicly, if I let people just slam other doctors aggressively, it just doesn't work. Rebecca says you couldn't watch much of the PBS scene because it was terrifying. Girl, welcome to our nightmare. I might make an exception for 45, though. I'm not going to worry about being sued there. He's got other big fish to fry. Rebecca says, I've recently started intense medication treatment for severe allergies, and it has helped my bladder too. You know what, Rebecca? That is so awesome. I'm so, so glad that you said that because for two reasons. Number one, we know that allergies can intensify IC. So if you're one of those patients where you already have hay fever like I do, and you notice that your symptoms get worse during your allergy season, that tells us that some of your symptoms are being driven by mast cells and histamine. And in fact, it was at the IC course at the American Urology Association 2 years ago where they really talked about this. And one of the things, this kind of a pro forma now for patients with allergies is that they might have you increase your allergy medicine during allergy season and or add another allergy medicine like Montelukast, especially if you're somebody who is prone to asthma. But let me show you something. Oh, and you know what? Hold on. Let me fix this here. You guys, we were having trouble with the Facebook stream, and part of it is still broken. That's why things might be a wee bit scattered today. Okay, so hold on a sec. Let me just get this picture here. Oh, hey, and during our last support group meeting 3 weeks ago, Christine and Laura both won prizes, but I could not send them out because of the fires. And so I still have your names on Post-its. I still know you're getting your prizes, your door prizes. So please don't take that personally. It is what it is, my friends. It is what it is. Okay, so I want to show you something. I'm just thinking about visuals. So this is a picture of a wounded bladder, a wounded, irritated bladder, right? Okay, so look, this is a picture of Hunner's lesions. I see subtype 1 Hunner's lesions. Hunner's lesions are known for having a very dark red center, and then it tends to have arms. We call it a stellate appearance. It looks like a star. And you can see in this picture that there are kind of arms of redness spreading throughout the area. And of course, Hunner's lesions represent its own unique disease process, right? There's been a very, very strong movement to move Hunner's lesions into its own unique disease with your own research, et cetera, something that we absolutely support. But getting back to histamines and allergies. Okay, my hair is being weird and I'm just being weird right now. All right. So let's look at this for a moment. This is a picture of IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven. One of the ways that we often describe this and what this feels like is that it's like 100 mosquito bites at once in your bladder. So think about when you get a bite and it gets red and swollen and itchy. Well, in this case, because the bladder has been damaged in some way, or this patient may have genitourinary syndrome of menopause or a chemical injury, something like that, wherever urine gets into one of these red spots, it does exactly what an allergen does. It causes mast cells to release histamine. And it's that histamine that triggers the redness, the irritation, the rawness, the pain. So 100 mosquito bites at once in your bladder. And so this is the second reason why using an antihistamine can be beneficial. And that is why hydroxyzine, also known as Atarax or Vistaril, is one of the standard therapies for somebody with bladder wall injury so that we can kind of calm that inflammatory process or that allergenic histaminic induced irritation. So getting back to Rebecca, she started as some severe allergy medicine and it's helped her bladder. And that's fabulous. That's why. Okay. Thank you, Brenda. Heidi says, yes, I'm in a flare. You're thinking about heading to the ER. Uh-oh. So Heidi, so my rule with the emergency room is if you're scared, if you're frightened, if you cannot pee, then hell yeah, get to the ER. If you don't have pain medicine, if your pain is out of control, your pain is worsening over time, get your tushy out to the ER or urgent care. Don't sit at home and suffer. It's important to ask for help. Linda says, have you ever heard of anybody taking Lyrica for IC pain? My urogynecologist is trying me on it. Yes, absolutely. I can't say I have any spectacular success stories with Lyrica. But one thing I do have that's a real story about Lyrica is something called Lyrica discontinuation syndrome. So we have had some IC patients who have used Lyrica. They thought successfully for years until they tried to get off of it. Unfortunately, there are some medications that provoke this very severe discontinuation syndrome. It's like withdrawal on steroids, only with hallucinations and things like that. And Lyrica is one of those medications. So, Linda, I would encourage you to Google Lyrica discontinuation syndrome to learn more about that, because you might want to talk to your doctor about what you can do to minimize that. All right, I'm doing it right now. Hold on. So Lyrica discontinuation syndrome. Suddenly stopping Lyrica or drastically decreasing the dose can lead to uncomfortable withdrawal symptoms. Lyrica withdrawal symptoms are similar to the withdrawal symptoms associated with alcohol or benzodiazepines. Yikes! People who have used very high doses of Lyrica have been on the medication for an extended period of time may encounter more severe withdrawal. Those who have taken lower dose or for a shorter period of time may experience mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. So Lyrica is a medication I would be pretty cautious of. In contrast, if you don't know it, my yoga ball is running amok. Stay. It's got a mind of its own. It's rolling everywhere. Okay, so in May, we had a new research study that was presented at the American Urology Association with interstitial cystitis and something called palmitoethanolamide, also known as PEA. PEA has been used in Europe for well over a decade for chronic pain and for intense pain and neuropathic pain. So we know that PEA as a supplement has been used successfully in research studies with fibromyalgia, with sciatica, with low back pain, and now with interstitial cystitis. Italian IC researchers presented the first IC PEA study, which showed that at month 3, 87% of patients using it had a significant reduction in their pain. At month 6, every single patient using it had a significant reduction in their pain, and 25% were pain-free. And that is with something, it is known as palmitoethanolamide. Palmitoethanolamide. So that was a European formula. We didn't have that formula in the United States until recently, and that is called Peora. And Peora is produced by a company called Natural Approach Nutrition. And this would be something that, given the research behind it, I would absolutely consider doing if you are struggling with pain. And the nice thing about it as an over-the-counter supplement is that all these formulas by Natural Approach Nutrition have been vetted by Dr. Ken Peters, the top IC researcher in the United States, if not the world. It also happens to be incredibly inexpensive at $29. Like, the cheapest supplement out there is a supplement that has the greatest success in reducing the pain of IC. So, honestly, I would look at, Linda, I would also look at this because there's research behind it, and you can find that research on our website and in our shop. You can find it on the store. So it was a poster session presented in May at the American Urology Association 2019 annual meeting. And every doctor there was really stunned by the data, and all the doctors there were really excited that we had something else that could be helpful with pain. Emily says, found out I don't have IC and all my problems are from pelvic floor. Girl, exactly. technically you would be IC subtype 3 pelvic floor driven, or bladder pain syndrome subtype 3 pelvic floor driven. So the odds are, in your case, Emily, your bladder's normal like my bladder, and your substantive issues are not with any organ as much as they are with your pelvic floor muscles instead. And that's exactly why Dr. Chris Payne, when he proposed his 5 subtypes for IC, really railed against this constant message to patients that IC is an incurable bladder disease, because it's not in your case. You have a curable pelvic floor issue. We don't want to take away the hope of patients. We got to know the subtype first. Some subtypes are curable, and some might not be curable. Some might be genetic. Sherry says, I saw a pain specialist who put you on Belbuca along with the Norco I've been taking. I've never heard of Belbuca. What the hell is that? Let's look it up. Belbuca. Oh. Belbuca, buprenorphine, also known as Butrans. Oh, okay. So it can be used to treat pain as well as addiction to narcotic pain relievers. You should not be taking any alcohol when you do it. And there is a high risk for respiratory distress if you take it in a high dose. So again, and if you're in one of those situations where you simply cannot get pain medicine, I mean, the PEA is absolutely worth trying. Laura says, newly diagnosed here, feeling awful, just like my life as I knew it is over. I just started Mirvatric on Thursday, doing CT next week to make sure nothing else is going on. Also going back to see your pelvic floor physical therapist, going to see your urologist in 5 weeks. All right, so Laura, my dear, listen, number one, this is not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. There's no shame. There's no blame in having IC. I do not want you carrying any burden on your shoulders. I do not want you thinking that you're damaged goods. I do not want you thinking that you're being punished or any way, shape, or form. Girl, you're hurt. You're hurt. Something got hurt. And now you are an anatomical mystery to be solved. We got to try to figure out how you got hurt and where you're hurt. So you could be hurt in your bladder. You could have sustained a bladder injury, like from chemotherapy or from ketamine or some sort of toxic chemical exposure. You could have a fungal infection that typical urine testing cannot identify. You could have a viral infection that typical urine testing cannot identify. You could have a pelvic floor injury. You could have a fibroid tumor pressing on your bladder. You could have bladder endometriosis, where endometriosis is growing on your bladder. You could have a nerve dysfunction. And so you've now got this fairly giant checklist of things to work through. And it's important, Laura, to understand that it's really hard to have a good discussion about therapeutic options until you understand your anatomy. You are an anatomical mystery to be solved. So I'm really glad that you're going back to pelvic floor physical therapy. Let's see if they can figure out if anything funky is going on with your pelvic floor. That's great. You're having a CT scan. The cool thing about the CT scan is that might show endo, that might show fibroids, that might show what do you call it? A fistula. So all of that testing is really, really, really good. And I want you guys to know, so our fall magazine has, I've been promising this for months now. I have been promising this for months, where I was going to do an exhaustive list of quote unquote confusable diseases. And that is now done, and it's going to be in our magazine. And let me just read off some of the conditions that can mimic IC. Hold on, let me pull up that article. Let's see here. I worked on this. I was working on this all August. Are you going to open? Come on, open. Open with Pages. Did it already open somewhere else? Is that why I don't see it? Here it is. Oh, it wants me to update. Okay, so let me just read off a couple of these real quick because I really think these are relevant. Okay, so number one, we always want to rule out cancer. Now, the odds of any of you having bladder cancer are pretty slim. But if you were a smoker and you smoked a lot, the number one cause of bladder cancer is in fact cigarette smoking. Most of you have already been tested and you didn't even know you were being tested. They do something called a urine cytology test to look for cancer in your urine. However, the other thing to really be aware of now is the HPV virus, human papillomavirus. If you have human papillomavirus and you've already tested positive for HPV, human papillomavirus is known for triggering a variety of different cancers down there: urethral cancer, vaginal cancer, vulvar cancer, etc. And so that's something it's extremely rare. I mean, the odds of you, slim to none. I do want to say, though, at least in my case, I could not stop thinking about cancer my first year. My pain was so severe. I was absolutely convinced that I was dying of cancer. So much so that I demanded the doctor do exploratory surgery because I was sure 100% that I was dying of cancer. And I woke up from the exploratory with he had a big smile on his face. He said, "Jill, you do not have cancer at all. This is just your bladder." And I needed to hear that because I was really obsessed about it. I just absolutely believed that I was dying of cancer because of this pain. And I will say in 25 years, I've talked to 2 people who had cancer. Okay. And I've worked with millions of people over the years. So, but you know what? If you're dwelling on it, if you're thinking on it, go ask for a urine cytology test. You just pee in a cup, bam, it's over. Okay. The second thing that is a confusable condition for IC is something called radiation cystitis. If you've had any radiation exposure because you had I don't know, whatever other condition that might have required radiation therapy, prostate cancer for a man, cervical cancer for a woman, radiation cystitis is real. And because radiation can actually damage some of the blood vessels in the bladder and trigger the symptoms of IC. But many patients with radiation cystitis often have difficulty peeing and they've got pretty heavy ulcers in their bladder. Chemocystitis, if you've ever gone through chemotherapy, we know that chemo can damage the bladder wall, and this is a really good example of a chemo damaged bladder right here. What's nice, though, if you're ever going through chemo, is there's a new medication called Mesnex that disables the damaging chemical, and so you don't have to worry about that so much. Tiaprophenic acid-induced cystitis. That is a very strong anti-inflammatory medication, well known to irritate the bladder. Ketamine, well known to irritate the bladder. Overactive bladder is a nerve dysfunction. So the difference between IC and overactive bladder is somebody with overactive bladder, they've got to pee a lot, and they've got to run to the bathroom because they feel urgency. They feel gotta go right now. But when they run to the bathroom, they're usually running to the bathroom to prevent leaking urine. They're running to the bathroom because they think they're going to be incontinent or they're going to be incontinent. Whereas an interstitial cystitis bladder damage patient is running to the bladder to reduce pain. For us, when there's urine in our bladder, when there's urine touching these wounds, it hurts. So we're running to the bathroom to reduce pain and discomfort. Let's see, neurogenic bladder, bladder stones, diverticulum, estrogen atrophy, viral infection, fungal infection, bacterial infection. Actually lists the different types of bacteria and fungi that we're most worried about. We're worried about prolapse, endometriosis, a lot of things for men, yada, 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 yada. Tarlov cysts, prior surgeries, foreign objects in the abdomen, like stitches, things like that. Those can all potentially be hidden causes of bladder issues that, when correctly addressed, can reduce your pain and suffering dramatically. Here, hold on a sec. I still feel discombobulated, guys. You just need to know I'm still not normal. I still feel pretty stressed out. Heidi says her pain is out of control. Pain. Heidi, do you have any medicine that you can use? If your pain is out of control, if your pain is so severe that you're shaking, that you can't sit, that you can't stand, that you can walk, I mean, that you can't lay down, that pretty much all you can do is pace, girl, get your butt to the doctor. Go to the ER right now. You got to get that checked on. Let's make sure you don't have maybe a missed bladder infection, something else going on. But if it's that bad, go. Don't wait, go. Hello, Rita. Sherry says her pain is off the charts now too. Okay, guys, let's take a moment. Let's take a moment. And how about if we just do some affirmations right now for pain? So how about if we do, let's do some of my favorite affirmations, and maybe we can help. So number one, first thing we've got to do with pain is understand that pain is intensified when you're anxious and when you're stressed. And so how do we calm anxiety? We calm anxiety with oxygen. So let's take a couple of deep breaths right now, okay? Let's go in for 3 and out for 3. Let's do it again. In for 3, out for 3. In for 3, out for 3. Let's do a couple of affirmations. Now, you guys adapt this however you need to adapt this, but let's just say, I can do all things through, pick your faith. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through my faith, which strengthens me. I can do all things. I will get through this. I have more control than I realize. There are doctors who will believe me. There are doctors who will care for me. I want to say something like, what is important for me is that I never let flares scare me anymore. I just don't. It's like, all right, it's my bladder. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. If I screw up again, I am not going to jump onto the bandwagon of thinking that that I'm going to suffer for the rest of my life. Whenever you're in pain, you have an emotional reaction to that pain. It's scary. Pain is freaking scary, especially bladder pain, because it's characterized by being relentless and difficult to ignore. It's hard. I mean, it just kind of pounds away at you, especially when you're trying to sleep, right? But the reality is that you've already proven that you can get better. You are living proof that there are good days and bad days, but there are good days. You have had good days. Yeah, you're having a bad day today, but you might have a good day tomorrow. Things might get better tomorrow. There's a very good shot that things will be better tomorrow. There's a very good shot that the reason why you're having a flare right now is that something got exacerbated. Your bladder might have been freaked by something. I was working with a lady yesterday who went to the vitamin shop and she got like 5 completely inappropriate vitamins, and she was taking them and she was screaming. So we want to do a little bit of elimination with that too. Did you start anything recently that could have triggered your bladder? Did you start a new vitamin? Did you do something new? Did you go off of your diet? We have a flare management guide on our website that will give you hour by hour rescue plans. So if your flare started because you ate something that you shouldn't have eaten, what are we going to do? We're going to, number one, alkalinize your urine with some baking soda. You could do pre-leaf, you could do Tums, you could do a quarter or a half teaspoon of baking soda in a glass of water. That will immediately reduce the acid in your urine. That's number one. Number two, you can drink water to dilute your urine, right? Number three, you can use heat on your belly to get your muscles to relax. That would be helpful. Number four, you've got medication, your previous medication that your doctor may have given you that you might be able to use. Number five, there are some supplements that might be calming and soothing, like Desert Harvest Aloe, which you can take with a flare. You can take a little bit extra when you have a flare to calm and soothe your bladder, right? Now, if you're having a flare because you took a long car ride and you're in a pelvic floor flare, or you've had sex, you're going to do different things. We're not going to worry about alkalinizing your urine. You're going to be focusing instead on calming and soothing those muscles. So we're going to get you in a bathtub or take a hot shower. Use a heating pad if that feels good. Maybe a muscle relaxant if your doctor has given you a muscle relaxant in the past. Doing a nice relaxation, getting those things to calm down there. So there are different types of flares. And you guys just know on Facebook, your questions flow through really, really quickly. And I might not be able to go back to them, so you can ask them again. Now, hold on a sec. Here we have something's going on here on YouTube. I got to look at this real quick. Iris says, does IC cause vulvodynia? No, but they can be triggered by the same thing. If you've got estrogen atrophy, that's going to irritate your vulva and it's going to irritate your bladder. Lisa answered that perfectly. Iris, I have on our website, if you go over to the IC Network website, icnetwork.org, would you search for an article called the seven causes of urethral pain, and read that, because that might help you understand why you might be having discomfort down there, not only with your urethra, but maybe even with your vulva. I also have a section on vulvodynia in there. Remember that the vulva is exquisitely sensitive to chemical exposure. And so if you're wearing a mini pad, if you're using a douche, any harsh chemicals down there, even your laundry detergent, your soap, somebody was using Dial soap in a previous meeting. Dial soap is agony. Irish Spring is agony to a tender, dry vulva from estrogen atrophy. So your vulva could be very, very irritated by a chemical. Wait, what's that? Okay, that's a bug. Sorry. Greg says, I feel like I have a permanent bladder infection. I always have a strong sensation to urinate that never goes away. It's pointless to go to the bathroom. I've been in a flare for 2 years. So Greg, is it possible for somebody to have a chronic infection? Absolutely. Not ever, there's kind of this perception, especially on the internet right now. There are people who are trying to make pretty bold statements. Everybody has chronic infection. That's certainly not true. We know, for example, that many patients have muscle injuries. I will tell you, Greg, in with the vast majority of men that I've worked with, and that's kind of one of my strong interest groups is working with men, the vast majority of men can go back to an original pelvic trauma of some type, especially if you were an athlete, if you were in the Army, if you're a paratrooper, if you're a bike rider, if you had a fall, car accident, if you're in a job that involves a lot of pelvic stress, like steel workers, things like that, if you're sitting for long periods of time, we're going to look at the pelvic floor as the dominant trigger for that symptom of urgency. When your pelvic floor muscles are tight, that compromises the nerves in the bladder, and it can give you all the symptoms that we associate with an infection: frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. So, Greg, number one, I would really want to know, number one, when your symptoms began, and was there some sort of triggering traumatic event? That's just absolutely consistent. And the sad thing for guys is you're often diagnosed with prostatitis for years before somebody looks beyond the prostate to the bladder, or more importantly, to the pelvic floor muscles. You don't have good days. So, okay, so Greg says his issue started with a bladder infection. So then the second thing that we want to do is let's follow this line of thought for a moment. If your symptoms began with a bladder infection, the question that we want to know is there any chance you still have a chronic form of that infection? Typical urine testing simply, thank you, Louisiana just put down exactly what I was going to say. We now know that traditional urine tests simply are not as accurate as something called next generation urine testing. And when you do a next generation test, what they do is they don't try to grow anything out in your urine. They're just looking for DNA. They're looking to identify all the bacteria in your urine, both good and bad, as well as any fungus in your urine. And Microgen, which Louisiana just said in the YouTube chat, is the company that does that. There's a website called bladderhealth.org, bladderhealth.org. Go over to that website and watch those videos of doctors doing next generation testing who have patients just like you, who with the next gen testing, they've been able to find that elusive infection. Now, not every doctor believes in next generation testing. To me, I'm about data. I don't like guessing. I like the facts. And Greg, the one thing that the American Urology Association is really crystal clear on in their guidelines of IC is if a patient is not responding to therapy, if a patient is getting worse over time rather than better, then we have to revisit the diagnosis. Let's not assume that a correct diagnosis has been made. Maybe they missed something. Maybe they missed a pelvic floor injury. Maybe they missed a hernia. Maybe they missed a chronic UTI. And so you truly are an anatomical mystery to be solved. And I don't like guessing. I like facts. You've suffered for 2 freaking years. Let's not guess anymore. The next generation test will give us facts. It will either rule in or rule out a pathogenic infection or fungal infection. If, for example, Greg, when they treated you for that original infection, what if perhaps they killed the bacteria, but they've now left you with a fungal infection, and you've been struggling with a fungal infection for 2 years? That's what the National Institutes of Health, IC, and chronic prostatitis research studies discovered about 5 years ago, is that many patients going through flares actually had an overgrowth of fungus in their urine. And if there's any patient group that's overexposed to antibiotics, it's going to be us. It's going to be the typical UTI patient. Hey, Dad, come here. You guys, I want you to help me wish my dad happy birthday. Come here, Dad. This is. Can you squat down and show them your face? This is Jack Osborne, my father, and he is going to be 97 years old tomorrow.
98.
No, 97.
I was born in 22.
You were. But it's 2019. It's 2019, so you're going to be 97 this year. You're going to be 98 next year, right? Am I raising? Okay, so look, Dad. They're saying happy early birthday. Happy birthday, handsome. Happy birthday, Jack. Happy birthday, Dad. Okay, so we'll figure it out. Okay, he's either 97 or 98.
Well, let's see. I was 96.
You were 96.
I was also 95.
Okay, so you guys, I want to say something about my dad, though. Now, listen, this is the guy who, when my IC started and I could barely walk, who drove me to the emergency room. You drove me to the ER in the middle of the night after I was bitten by a black widow spider. Right? Remember that? In the bathroom?
Yeah, I've been 97 years old. I'm lucky to remember what I did yesterday.
This is the guy who tried to pretend that he was dead when they did hand surgery and they wheeled him out of the OR, and he tried to fake being dead, only his color, he was beautifully tan and it was obvious he wasn't dead. He's got a wicked sense of humor. So when you hear me talking about my dad, this is my dad, Jack Osborne.
Just remember last December when I was a young and handsome man.
The IC network would not be a business today and a support group today without him, because he saved my life. He and my mom, they stepped in and they helped me when I could barely help myself. So thank you, Dad.
Thank you. I need the washer.
You need the washer? Well, I can't do the washing right now. You'll have to move things along.
The washing is done. I got to take it down to the process.
I can't do that right now, but you can do that.
I don't have the car.
Then just leave it in there for an hour or two and I'll get to it eventually.
I've been doing that for an hour.
I know, but I'm doing a live stream, Dad. We've got
shut the monitor, of course.
We've got 75 people watching me right now. Oh. Yeah. Greg says the bladder infection. You know what? And guys, listen, I got to tell you, honestly, if I would not be here, period, if that lovely man and my lovely mother hadn't helped. I was so despondent my first year. My pain was so off the charts. I could barely walk. And I'm living proof that people get better. I don't have pain anymore. I rarely have pain. You know, so carry hope in your heart. Healing does happen. Having support of family members and friends is so incredibly important. And I was so blessed by that wonderful man. Even though we disagree, even though we have our issues every now and then, it is what it is. I truly hope that you have a Jack Osborne in your life. I think he's outlived all of his brothers and sisters. He is going to be the oldest surviving sibling of the 6 siblings. I think he's going to live till he's 100. We'll see. Just want him to be comfortable. Greg says, bladder infection happened 25 years ago. I've had bladder issues ever since. My symptoms got way worse after I did tibial nerve stimulation. Okay, so like family affair, this is my mother, but she's in a house dress and she probably doesn't want to be on camera, right?
Right.
Okay, so you don't want to come in further because you're almost naked. Are you okay? Here, wait a second. She doesn't look okay. Hold on. Mom, what's going on? What's going on?
Oh.
Have you eaten anything?
Oh, yes, I had a big breakfast.
Okay, have you had water?
Yeah.
Okay, then what's going on? Why do you look funny?
Old age.
Okay, well, why don't you go back into the kitchen with Dad? Don't walk right now. I mean, the walking is obviously hurting you.
Do you by any chance know where my little hand vacuum is?
No. I don't. And I'm doing a live stream right now, so
You're
I cannot
still doing
stop.
it?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. But
Yeah,
you need to
go ahead.
go sit down
Go
and
ahead.
relax. Your leg is obviously hurting you. Okay. That's mom. She had a hip replacement that went bad, so she's got a bad hip. All right. Sorry. That's life in my house right now. So Greg, that's so interesting that your pain worsened after post-tibial nerve stimulation. So the post-tibial nerve stimulation should not have hurt. So did they have it turned up so high that it was really, really painful? Because it's never supposed to hurt. I was one of the earliest post-tibial patients back in 1993 with the guy who invented it. And so basically they put the needle at your ankle, and then they attach a stimulator to it, and they turn it up until your big toe bends down and your little toes flex out, and then they back it off. It shouldn't hurt when they're doing it. So did it hurt when they were doing it? Harley says, I want you to know that just seeing your father brought such a smile to my face. God bless him. My dad passed away. Yeah. Curtis says, I'm with you on the constant pressure in the bladder, Greg, and the constant feeling like your bladder isn't empty. I was misdiagnosed for 12 years, said I had prostatitis. Curtis says, I want to do the next generation urine test. My new urologist is great, but isn't too hip with the next gen test. I will see if my new family doctor will participate. Guys, again, it's data. It's just data. It's part of the puzzle. Absolutely part of the puzzle. All right, let's go back here up to Facebook. You know what? I got to make my Facebook window bigger so I can see your. So YouTube, I'm not going to be able to see your comments here for a moment. Rebecca says, next generation DNA microgen test is unreliable. They cannot prove which bacteria is pathogenic. That is true. However, it will at least tell you what's going on in the biome. And I don't believe that it's just guessing. I think that it's hard facts. We know at least what's there. And then based upon what they find there, then various assumptions can be made or not made. But at least it's data. If that next generation test finds fungus, then that's a huge piece of this puzzle because fungus normally isn't in the bladder. So I'm going to disagree with you there, Rebecca. Cindy says, do others have issues getting infections after an installation? Yeah, it's fairly common. You have to learn really good sterile technique and understand too that if you're over menopause, perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal, you have the potential of being more prone to infection anyway, just because of the loss of estrogen. Hello, Melissa. Sherry says, I really think Bladder Builder helps me. Just not sure how much it helps yet. Yeah. Thank you guys for saying happy birthday to my dad. 97 years old. Like, holy hell. And you know what? He's like almost all there. Just the little tiny things there, like him thinking it was his 98th birthday. But honestly, he is on the computer all day. He is reading all day. He's getting a new book every day for a week for his birthday. Jennifer says, how about hip labral tears? Just found one on the same side that you type pelvic floor muscles on. Any thoughts or experiences with it? You know what, Jennifer, I got to tell you, we're seeing that more and more. We are seeing more and more patients who have been diagnosed with hip labral tears as a foundational trigger for pelvic floor dysfunction. Rebecca, I don't want to get into a big debate on next generation testing right now, hun. I'm sorry. It's been a stressful couple of weeks for us. We just don't need to go walk down that pathway today. I'm just going to agree to disagree with you on parts of that. Carrie says, it's been suggested that IC is one result of fluoroquinolone antibiotic toxicity. I've had issues since taking ciprofloxacin 8 years ago, but suddenly improved exponentially 14 weeks ago. Any thoughts? So the FDA has been issuing alerts about fluoroquinolones for 4 or 5 years now. We call it, have you been floxed? And so of the many toxic reactions that can occur with Cipro and those types of medications, there are the extreme reactions like aortic aneurysm. But there's another type of reaction that happens to healthy young people. And they call it being floxed. And it's like the Cipro damages, I don't remember if it's the nervous system. I did an article on it. Here it is. So this is our magazine, the IC Optimist, right? For people who are members of the IC network, we have a quarterly magazine that goes out, and our fall one's delayed, but obviously without power, we can't do anything, but it's coming out hopefully in the next week. All right, so I have an article in here, The Dangers of Cipro and Levaquin, Have You Been Floxed? Let's just look at that for a moment. Yes, Dad?
You forgot to tell him I got up at 9:30 and made biscuits.
He did.
And now I have to take my GERD.
Uh-oh, did your GERD get triggered? Did you have anything else besides your biscuits? It was the butter on the biscuits then. We're dealing with GERD. All right, so here's this article. He's also a master at doing the laundry, and he does the towels every week. The Dangers of Cipro and Levaquin, Have You Been Floxed? And I just wanted to, so the potential side effects, so prescribed more than 32 million times in the USA in 2015, fluoroquinolone antibiotics have caused devastating side effects for tens of thousands of patients, including diarrhea and vomiting, tendon rupture, joint, muscle, and nerve conditions, retinal detachment, aortic aneurysm, central nervous system dysfunction, insomnia, restlessness, fatigue, seizures, convulsions, psychosis, and more. Some patients have developed hemolytic uremic syndrome, a condition that affects the blood and blood vessels, resulting in the destruction of blood platelets, anemia, and kidney failure. Some patients have had agonizing skin conditions called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. It causes the skin and mucous membranes to become necrotic and die. But here's the one that I think, Carrie, you might fall into. A very small group of patients, most often healthy young females, have developed fluoroquinolone disability syndrome, where they become permanently disabled after using the medication for minor medical conditions. Why are patients struggling with body-wide side effects? Again, it goes back to mitochondria, which are thought to have evolved from beneficial bacteria-like cells billions of years ago. Actually, let's take that back here. So when you take an antibiotic, your assumption is it's going to kill bacteria, correct? But would you take an antibiotic if it would kill normal, healthy human cells? And that's what they think is going on with fluoroquinolone antibiotics. What if the antibiotic also kills mammalian human cells, cells that are important to our life and our body functions? The researchers now believe that is exactly what is happening when a patient suffers a severe side effect while taking a fluoroquinolone antibiotic like Cipro or Levaquin. This type of antibiotic appears to damage mitochondria, an essential structure in the cells throughout the human body that turns sugars, fats, and proteins into chemical energy and allows us to function. So there have been warnings on from the FDA for the last 10 years Millions of patients have been exposed that have triggered severe and in some cases permanent damage. This is Levaquin, Cipro, Avalox, Factive, and Baxdela, as well as the generics. All right. Now, I was just talking with a patient last week. Doctor gave her Cipro for a simple UTI, completely against the FDA guidelines. You shouldn't be taking Cipro or any of these medicines for a simple UTI anymore. The risks outweigh the benefits, according to the FDA. So, Carrie, the cool thing here is that you're better. You had issues 8 years ago. You probably had some sort of fluoroquinolone toxicity issue that your body has finally been able to heal and repair. That is my hope for you, hun. But I'm so glad you're better. Awesome. Tabitha says she couldn't survive without PTNS. It's been life-changing. Yeah, PTNS helped me. Elle says, my PFD started after labral tears on my hips, but I also have endometriosis, so not sure of the relationship. Aaron says, anybody get terrible pain where their leg meets their pelvic floor? So, Aaron, are you talking about, right? Okay, so here's, not that you need to see this, but it's not like you can't see it. So you're talking about right here, right? The top of the leg. I would have you touch your glands. You can get glands right there. And if you've got any tender swollen glands right there, then that's something you definitely need to bring to your doctor's attention. Look at all you people talking about your problems with Cipro, that you've had issues. Hello, Rosalie. Nice to see you. But also, too, getting back to that upper pain, you've got muscles that go from your pelvic floor down into your upper leg. So that pain at the top of your leg could still be related to your pelvic floor, hun, not just to the gland. Carrie, if you can email me icnetwork@mac.com, I will email that to you. Okay? But you have to email me. Don't just post your email here, because I'm going to miss it. You're going to have to email me icnetwork@mac.com and tell me what you wanted, and I'll send it to you. Jennifer says, do you hear people getting better after hip labral repair? I can't say that I've talked with patients who have had a surgical repair and how they've done afterwards. Thank you, Carrie. Carrie says, many congratulations to you on being one of the best support platforms. I love my job. I do. Molly says, I had no choice but to take Cipro that I was given. It was a low dose, 250 milligrams twice daily for 3 days. Feel sick and tired and weak in my right leg. Yeah, Molly, I mean, if there's no other antibiotic that will work, then that's what the FDA says, is if you've excluded the other antibiotics and you're left with the fluoroquinolone, that's the context where they say take it, understanding the risk. Brenda says, is it possible to take too much Preleaf? Oh, hell yeah, it is. Sure. You can get calcineuremia. Is that how you pronounce it? Calcineuremia? Where you get an excess of calcium in your bloodstream that could lead to kidney stones or bladder stones. You don't take Preleaf like candy. But speaking of Preleaf, guys, we do have to thank the sponsors for these live chats. Oh, come on, Paul. It's always important for me to recognize the companies that help make these happen, especially this year, because this has been a very, very challenging year for everyone. Preleaf is the most popular supplement that's been out for 25 years and counting. It is an acid reducer. It's a calcium glycerophosphate pill. You can take a pill or two of pre-leaf before you're going to eat something that might be too acidic, whether it is lasagna made by grandma on Thanksgiving, or whether it is coffee or something like that. You can do a little bit of this beforehand, and that will reduce the acid level in your urine, so your urine might not be so irritating to that tender bladder. And so we are incredibly grateful for both AK Pharma, the company that developed Pre-Leaf, and now DSC Healthcare Solutions, who owns Pre-Leaf now that Alan Kligerman of AK Pharma has retired, for keeping this product alive and well. You know what? We almost lost this about 10 years ago, guys. They almost shut this down, and I fought for it. And I did their national marketing for a year to keep this alive, because I knew so many of you rely on this. This is a steadfast benefit for so many patients, so that you can eat a good, healthy, balanced diet. But again, you don't eat it like candy. You take it before a meal, but if you shouldn't be popping anything like candy all day long. You could, that would be way, way, way too much. Very, very few side effects reported with Pre-Leaf. Very fair. It's no different than kind of taking Tums. So if you can take a Tums, then the odds are you're going to tolerate Pre-Leaf well. But as always, if you have any doubts, please talk to your doctor first, especially if you have a family with a history of kidney stones or bladder stones. Then you might not want to take a calcium product. Hello, Karine. Hello, Kayla. Brenda says Pre-Leaf has been amazing. Kristen said, I've had it so bad I can barely walk. Fortunately, with pelvic floor physical therapy, home stretches, plus a lot of hard work with diet, heat, using TENS, it's gotten much better. Driving and stress really mess with me. Yeah, they do with me too. You know, I have to say, you know, in hindsight, in my case, what I thought were, sorry, my neck is really tight. Talk about, oh, holy moly. You know, people will ask me, and they'll say, well, how has IC affected your life? I mean, what is the legacy of your IC? And I have a couple of legacies. Legacy number one goes back to when I was in my 20s, before IC, when I had IBS. And even though that's completely controlled now, and I rarely have issues, because I know what to do, and I know diet, and I know how to eat correctly for both IC and IBS. I do not like eating out. I only have a couple of restaurants that I go to that I trust. And so a lot of people bond over going out, you know, to new restaurants, or they go to a restaurant and then they'll go to a play. I don't do that. With my friends, my small circle of friends, they all know we're going to go do the activity first and then eat afterwards, so that if I have an issue, I can go home. And even though that hasn't happened in a decade, I still think about it. I still am super cautious about that. And then legacy number two really is just traveling. Like, I'm a homebody. Traveling is stressful for me. It just, the bouncing in the car triggers my pelvic floor. If I have to fly anywhere, aside from having an IC and IBS flare the day before or 2 days before, just from anxiety thinking about it, just the bus ride to San Francisco International Airport puts me into severe pelvic floor spasms. So I have to do muscle relaxants before I even leave to try to get there. So I'm not a big fan of traveling either. And I regret that. I've lost a lot of opportunities to go do IC stuff, like fly to India to go speak at an IC conference. And it's like, no, it's a little too far for me. Hi, Brienne. Nice to see you. Tiffany says, is it possible to take too much pyridium? Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to be careful with pyridium. Pyridium is really meant to only be used for small periods of time. If you take a lot of it over time, it's been linked, if I remember correctly, to liver damage or to kidney damage, one or the other. Even though there are doctors who like patients to and suggest that patients use pyridium for long periods of time, when you actually read the medication notes from the company, they're like, anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks. Usually not for longer periods of time than that. Hey, you know what is so cool about YouTube right now is we got 3 guys in here supporting each other. Dudes, well done. Come back. Oh, Curtis, it's you. Hey, we talked. It's nice to see you. The Cleveland Clinic, there's one doctor at the Cleveland Clinic that I really like. His name is Dan Shoskis. He'd be an interesting second opinion. And he also was the guy who actually was a foundational doctor in some of the supplements, quercetin, and specifically, he did some research at UCLA, and then he played a really huge role in the development of the U-point subtyping system that's used up in Canada. Next generation urine tests, again, they don't try to grow anything out of your urine overnight. They just look at DNA. They used next generation testing to study any DNA they find in your urine, and what that will reveal is good bacteria, bad bacteria, fungi, and in some cases, even viruses. Much more exhaustive tests that, as Rebecca said on Facebook, some doctors believe in, some doctors don't believe in. To me, it's data, and I think it's a valuable, useful data. Lisa says, my primary care does not like supplements, so to appease her, I'm tapering off a bladder rest. What? Why? I mean, hun, we got the research. We got some pretty solid research studies with supplementation. They're specifically suggested in the AUA guidelines. They're step 1 treatment options in the American Urology Association guidelines for IC. The reason why they say try the supplements before you try the oral medications is because they don't have the side effects of the oral medications. So that's a little baffling, hun. I mean, if you had gotten worse after taking a supplement, then yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's important. But, hmm. So you can get pre-leaf in our shop if you want pre-leaf, Iris. She wants to stop you. She wants you to stop aloe vera, which has a double-blind placebo-controlled study showing it can reduce the symptoms of IC. I mean, so listen, there's definitely a group of patients. I was working with one on Friday who, like, is a huge. She just bought $200 worth of supplements at her local vitamin shop, and she told them she had IC. What should they do? And they gave her completely inappropriate stuff. It's like she was reading up. They gave her a multivitamin. They gave her a B6, B12 vitamin. They gave her I just couldn't believe the list that they gave her, and she's like, "Can I take that?" No, 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 no. And the only one that was okay was a calcium magnesium one. So I told her to take him back because he obviously, who the person who gave him the recommendations, didn't know damn nothing about IC to tell her to take. One of them was a cranberry product, cranberry vitamin C product. Ridiculous. And then we talked about the supplements instead. We've got supplements with research behind them that shows that they can be helpful. Desert harvest aloe is one. But again, in her case, and there are some patients who are like this, you get so desperate, you just take more and more and more and more and more. And you can't do that. You could potentially be hitting either a weird combination that could be provoking you in some way based upon your individual tolerances, or you may just be taking too much of something, whatever. And so, I completely agree with stopping stuff for a period of time, like a week, and then just to try to figure out if something's bothering you, and then doing trial and error to start. But if she doesn't have a plan for trying to reduce some of your pain and discomfort, it doesn't make a lot of sense here. Hopefully she's giving you a backup plan with some pain medicine or something else. But this is your primary care provider. What does she intend to do to help calm some of your bladder pain? Is she going to do bladder installations? Will she do a heparin lidocaine installation a couple times a week to get you through this while she's trying to figure stuff out? That, Lisa, girl, that's a little interesting. If you want to talk on Monday, let's talk, okay? Ira says, thanks for mentioning me. I'm learning a lot more from your program. Seems like my doctors just want to keep you on amitriptyline, tizanidine, and pyridium and miratrix. Well, they all have the potential of helping to some degree, but again, you are an anatomical mystery to be solved. And it's very, very important that we always go back and redirect that discussion to trying to understand why your bladder is being triggered, or why is your pelvic floor being triggered? Or, is there anything else contributing to this pain? Tanya says, I so relate to restaurants and traveling, food allergies. I see flares. I get anxious going out. I don't get anxious going out. I don't. I just took for the first time in 5 years, I just spent 3 nights at a hotel because I was exhausted. And there was just other stuff going on. And so last night was only my second night home. So I spent 3 nights at the Kenwood Inn. And it was divine. I just, between the fires and caring for my parents and doing a whole bunch of cleaning and having some problems around the home that I had to deal with, specifically rats. We discovered rats in my dad's man cave. I just worked myself to oblivion, and I hit the wall. And I just said to my folks, I'm going to be 15 minutes away, but I'm going. And I slept 3 nights at the spa, and it was divine to just walk in, shut the door, fall flat on my back on this gorgeous bed, I turned on the fire, the gas fire. In fact, I did a live stream one night and I just wrote. I could just turn on my computer and do what I want to do, which is write about IC and finish up our magazine. And so I'm not afraid to go out. I just need control. I need control. Karine says, what's your advice for Botox? Well, Botox has a place. Botox is a step 4 treatment option for IC. And so it used to be step 5. The reason why, remember the steps are arranged with respect to the risk of adverse event. So they want you to do the easy stuff before you do the hard stuff that can cause more difficult side effects. So the challenge with Botox is it temporarily, it's botulinum toxin, it will temporarily stop nerves from functioning. And so what they do in the bladder wall is they will do random spots in the bladder or in specific areas, the goal of which they hope is turning off the nerve that is triggering your frequency urgency. Unfortunately, they might also accidentally turn off the nerve that helps you pee. And some people come out of Botox therapy unable to pee. And so Botox is not done if you're not capable of self-catheterizing, because some patients require self-catheterization for a couple weeks or a couple months until it wears off, but it almost always wears off. So Jesse says, what would you recommend for internal pain? Where internally, hun? You got to tell me where. Where is that pain internally? Is it in your vagina? Is it in your rectum? Is it in your belly? Is it in your bladder? Is it in your low back? Where is it? Lisa says, it really is a different world with eating out and traveling when you suffer from IC. Yeah, it is. I've gone to a lot of IC conferences, and my mom was my travel buddy. Because that was when my IC was really bad. And so my mom and my sister both came with me to meetings because I was so destroyed by the freaking bus ride to the airport. I was usually just crying, once we walked in. And having somebody with me was very, very important. The other thing that's important now is I have the ability now to fly out of my local airport, Sonoma County Airport, and so I can actually get to Denver and San Diego and LA and Washington, and that makes it much easier because then I wouldn't have to take the bus to the airport. It's the damn bus to the airport that freaks me out every time. Laura says, is there any information available as for a list of questions that we should ask on our first appointment? Yes, please. Go on over to icnetwork.org, and I have a whole section there on questions to ask and how to prepare for that appointment and all that sort of stuff. Laura, so this is what I say to every single patient is do not walk into a doctor's office and say you have IC. I want you to walk into a doctor's office and describe your symptoms. I don't want you to fall down the rabbit hole of IC. I want you instead to get that doctor to focus on where your symptoms are and what could be triggering your symptoms. You are indeed an anatomical mystery to be solved. And so I want you to be able to walk in and say, doctor, I have this specific pain in this specific location. I am here to try to figure out why I have this pain. Can you help me? And so be prepared to talk about your symptoms, but the devil is in the details. Except it's a good devil. The angel's in the details, because your ability to describe subtle symptoms is often the best determinant in them making a good diagnosis. So, as an example, do you feel any fluttering? Do you feel flickering every now and then? Do you get a shooting pain down your leg once in a blue moon? There's nothing embarrassing if you have rectal pain, if you've got whatever, if you've got pain when you orgasm. For guys, if you've got pain when you ejaculate, whatever. Your ability to discuss and present those symptoms and say, I am here to try to figure out why these are happening. And then in the same sense, it's important to try in your mind to go back to when your symptoms began. Because you shouldn't doubt your natural instinct here. If your symptoms began after a surgery, and we see that frequently, then your logical question is going to be, all right, I had a surgery to do this. Let's say a surgery to remove an ovary, and I woke up peeing all the time, and it's never gone away. And I'm here to try to figure out what could have happened during that surgery that would have triggered this, right? So I really want them. The mistake you could make would be to walk in and say, "Can you give me a treatment?" You can't talk about treatment until you understand your anatomy. So you've got to give them time. Don't force them to guess. Give them time to study your body. At your first appointment, you should have a pelvic floor assessment. Let's see if anything weird's going on with your muscles. At your first appointment, they're going to do a urine test. Let's see if they find anything weird. They can do a urine cytology test. Look for that. Give them an opportunity to explore your history as well. And it's about solving a mystery. Don't walk in, burst into tears, and say, "Please give me anything," or "Please take my bladder out." That's not the way to do it. It's like, "Here's my symptoms. Help me understand what in my pelvis could be triggering those symptoms." If you have fibroids, they could be pushing on your bladder, causing this. If you've got endometriosis, that could be compromising your bladder and doing this. If you've ever fallen and hurt your tailbone, that could be triggering some of this with a pelvic floor injury. If your symptoms began after having a baby, we know pelvic floor can be traumatized that way. If your symptoms began because you were a partier and you used to do ecstasy and stuff like that, then we're going to look at chemical injury, stuff like that. Happens all the time. So Carol says, "What happened to Cystacute? It used to help me. Is it still around?" You know, hon, we have stopped working with that company a couple of years ago. We're going to be, guys, I'm bringing in a new vitamin line. We have a new low acid vitamin line, and we're going to discontinue Multi-Right, which is the last product that we had from Far Laboratories. The new one is called, it's also made by Natural Approach Nutrition, the same company that makes Bladder Builder. They asked me if there was anything else that I thought IC patients could use, and I went right to a low acid multivitamin that had a few less minerals, and so it's called Bladder Smart. It's a low acid multivitamin called Bladder Smart. Gluten-free, wheat-free, shellfish, fish, tree, soy, milk, egg, preservatives, yeast, stearate-free, vegan, non-GMO, organic. And we're going to have that hopefully in a week or two. There was a problem with the last production of Multi-Right, and the shiny coating that makes it easy to swallow didn't get fully coated, and the pills are very gritty. And so I'm kind of done. I'm kind of done with that company. Nanette says, "Nanette, I want you to know I love the name Nanette. I love it. And the reason why I love it is because when I was a child, my mother used to read me a story called Nanette in the Chateau. So whenever I see the name Nanette, I think back to these glorious nights of my mother reading me this story." So anyway, Nanette says, "I lost my doctor in Philly due to the hospital closing, having a hard time finding a doctor that works for me." So if you were a patient of Dr. Christine Whitmore's, nobody knows where she is at this point in time. No clue. I have no clue. You're not the first. So I would, if I were you, down in Bryn Mawr is her old colleague, Dr. Susan Kellogg Spate, who runs a pelvic pain clinic down there. And a lot of those patients followed her down to Bryn Mawr. That's where I would give it a shot. Dr. Susan Kellogg Spate, SPADT. And I have nobody's been able to figure out what's happening with Dr. Whitmore. I did see that she was chairing a new committee in Europe, like for the International Continence Society. So maybe she's in Europe. I don't know. Laura says, are you aware of a doctor at University of Iowa that specializes in IC? Yes, this Dr. Carl Kreder, Kreder, is an IC researcher at the University of Iowa. Carl Kreder. Tiffany says, I'm losing so much hair on Elmeron and my vision is getting worse. Then, hun, if your vision is getting worse, what the researchers at the Emory Eye Center say is you really have to stop the medication. If you want to save your eyesight, you have to stop the medication. You know, we've had a couple new research studies that were released this fall, including our first population-based study from Northern California. Ophthalmologists at Kaiser Permanente were so intrigued by that original report a year ago that they went into their own patient archives in Oakland and did a population assessment, and their research study found that 25% of patients who have taken Elmeron for 5 years or longer show Elmeron-induced eye damage. And so that's really stunning. We also have now law firms are circling the IC patient community, looking for patients. The company, the firm that I think is the most heartfelt is an attorney whose wife has IC, and he contacted me a long time ago about this. And so he and I have been talking for some time. I'm not getting paid or anything like that. You don't need to think about that. And he is he's not going to do a class action. He's going to do it. Let me find it. Hold on. I can give you the website because they're doing a research right now. They're doing their own research study because they want to do they don't want to do a class action. They want to do a different type where patients get more money because obviously his wife has this. So it's IC. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Is that it? Let me find his website. Where is it? Like I was just, maybe it's in my trash file. I'm having a brain fart right now. Oh, duh. Hold on. Let me look at my sent mail because I just sent him an email. Sorry. Hold on one sec, guys. Weird. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, that's why. Okay, hold on. Oh, here it is. ElmeronEyeDisease.com. elmeroneyedisease.com. And they're doing, okay, so hold on a sec. I almost bought that domain because I have a website, Pentosan Eye Disease, where we're doing all the updates. But elmeroneyedisease.com. Okay, so he's doing a mass tort. And he explains what that is. In a mass tort case, the attorneys get less money and the claimants get more money. And the name of the attorney is Jansen, Michael Jansen, and he is the husband of a wife who took Elmeron. And so he was the first attorney to reach out to us. And I think that his intentions are much purer than a typical class action where they're just trying to make a lot of money suing a pharmaceutical company. Tracy is from Liverpool. Hello, Tracy. Tanya says, your low acid multi is working for me. How much calcium should a woman take these days? Guidelines. Hon, I don't know that number off the top of my head. Yeah, I wish we knew what happened to Dr. Whitmore, but she is gone silent. The only thing I've shown of her recently is that she's heading this IC committee in Europe. I mean, normally when a doctor closes their clinic, they send you a letter and they give you a transition plan, right? And I'm really baffled that her patients didn't get a letter explaining what was going on. That's so odd for patients to, not be informed of what's happening with the clinic. John says they see Susan Kellogg now, but you also feel a need for a urogynecologist. Brenda says, my pain management doctor is going to set me up with another plexus block. The first one only worked for about 24 hours, and within 48 hours, I was in the ER. They told me that sometimes it may take a couple more to reduce pain. What are your thoughts on plexus blocks? If you've got nerve-driven pain, the nerve blocks are pretty much considered the way to go. Katie says, I've not seen many reviews on Bladder Builder. What are people saying? I'm going to say, we've got well over 1,000 patients using Bladder Builder now. And I have, right before the fires, I had all their emails because I wanted to send research, a survey to people using Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, and Pure to get their thoughts. I haven't been able to do that yet. I'm going to say 80-20. I think that 80% of the patients who have tried Bladder Builder really like it. I think about 20% of the patients prefer Cystoprotect. I also do have new Cystoprotect news. The Cystoprotect, the production run for the new reformulated Cystoprotect is now complete. They do now have Cystoprotect without titanium dioxide, and I hope to have that soon. We just, one of the demands that I made of them was that they reduce the price, because we've never had a situation where a brand was destroyed like Cystoprotect was because of a cancer warning. And it could have all been avoided if they had simply removed the ingredient a couple years ago. They just ignored that and created off this veritable blank storm. And so Mylan Pharmaceuticals, who owns Cystoprotect now for US sales, has a long road to earning trust again with me as their only reseller, but also with you guys. because it was just stupid what happened. So one of the things I demanded of them was that they reduce the price. And so that's what they're supposed to get back to me on this week. Carol Desanio says Dr. Carolyn Eccles is with Jefferson and that she is worth a try. Destiny says, I was just recently diagnosed with IC. I have not found a way to manage your symptoms yet. So, Destiny, if you, number one, welcome. I'm so sorry that you're going through this, but girl, you are so not alone. You are so not alone. And the cool thing here is that, you have a really strong, vibrant patient community who want to help. However, I'm just going to be real honest with you. You've got to really work to learn about IC, and you're not going to be able to do that on Facebook. If you could come over to our website, the IC Network, which is right there, icnetwork.org, and I want you to watch 3 videos. I want you to watch the 5 subtypes of IC, the 6 steps of treatment, and the estrogen chat. Those are the 3 core foundational videos for anybody who's newly diagnosed. Because it's important that you understand your variant of IC. Not everyone is the same. There's tremendous diversity in this IC patient population. And that's where Facebook can really steer you in the wrong direction, because you might be reading stories from somebody with Hunner's lesions when you actually have a pudendal nerve entrapment. And so it's very important that you understand the 5 core variants of IC first. And the way you do that is by starting over on our website and going to some really credible websites rather than social networking. We also do support on the phone. We are the only patient group that takes patient phone calls. I believe it or not, actually answer that phone line. But there is a sizable queue now. It's first come, first serve. 1-800-928-7496. You can get the phone number right on our Facebook page or on YouTube. I try to return phone calls within 24 to 48 hours. It is free. If you want to spend more time, you've got a lot more questions, and it looks like we're going to have to talk for an hour as compared to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You might sign up for some coaching, which is paid for. But either or, we have a phone line that's available. I work with patients every single day. It's just first come, first serve. I also return phone calls well into the evening. So if you leave a message at 10 a.m., you might not get a phone call from me until 8 p.m. because that's how many questions we get. I do my best. Laura says, what is the difference between a urogynecologist and a regular gynecologist and a urologist? So a urologist has a specialty in the urinary tract, kidneys, bladder, prostate. A gynecologist has a specialty in the female reproductive system, ovaries, uterus, vagina. A urogynecologist has double training in both. And now that we know that so many IC patients actually have other issues going on, they might have fibroid tumors in their uterus, they might have endometriosis, many certainly have pelvic floor issues. A urogynecologist is a really great place to start. You know what? Let's just do this. Let's just go over these subtypes real quick. But let me go get some chapstick. My lips always get really dry when I talk like this. I'll be right back. You watch me, my mouth open is going to be the picture they pick for promoting this on Facebook. All right. All right. All right. All right. Okay. So we haven't done this yet tonight. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's talk about the 5 variants of IC for those of you who are new. So so as a support group leader for 25 years, I have to be honest and tell you that back then in the 1990s and in the 2000s, there was always a group of patients who didn't respond to bladder treatments. And they struggled. It was a real freaking mystery. Like, why does Elmeron help some people, that person, but not help this person? Because back then, they thought everybody had a bladder disease. They thought everybody had bladder-centric issues. And yet, if you go and read some of the early medical textbooks, like there's a textbook from some doctors at Stanford back in the 60s, they kept describing muscles so tight they resembled tight piano strings. And so the tide that turned it started with a physical therapist named Rhonda Cotterinos, who's outside of Chicago, who years ago, like 15 years ago, started going to national IC conferences, and she would say to the doctors, "Hey, have you considered the pelvic floor?" And she goes, "I have been able to make patients' symptoms improve when I work with their pelvic floor muscles." And they blew her off. In fact, I will tell you, at the one meeting, I think it was in Minneapolis, a big National Institutes of Health meeting, they gave her the last spot on the docket in this day-long conference on IC. And half the doctors walked out while she was talking. It's completely disrespected. But she was very, very persistent. And then more physical therapists got involved. And then more doctors were like, yeah, you know what? So many patients have really tight muscles. What the hell is this all about? Finally, the National Institutes of Health IC Clinical Trials Group at the time said, maybe we better study this a little bit more. So they did a national study on the effectiveness of pelvic floor physical therapy on IC symptoms. And it was a multi-center study. So this was done across the nation at several different universities. The data that came out of that study changed the IC world forever, because what that study proved was that pelvic floor physical therapy was as effective, if not more effective, than most of the other therapies in reducing the symptoms of IC. And we as an IC community went, what? 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 Why would muscle therapy help a bladder disease? Does that mean that for some patients, their problem is muscular and not from their bladder? And that was in 2008. And so in 2008, the IC world expanded. And people went, maybe it's a bladder disease for some people, but maybe it's a muscle injury for other people. And that was single-handedly the most important research study from a diagnostic standpoint that ever came out, because that is a study that made everybody take a step back and go, wait a second, our assumption that IC is an incurable bladder disease is probably wrong in some patients. Now, since that time, in the last 11 years, more and more doctors have been exploring these variants. Like, what about the patient who, when you remove her fibroid, her IC symptoms go away? Not a bladder disease, not a muscle disease, reproductive issue. So what at the top elite levels now, what researchers are doing and clinicians are doing is they're trying to explore and understand these variants. Because if somebody has a muscle problem, taking Elmeron is a waste of time. If somebody has chemo-induced cystitis, maybe physical therapy would be not particularly helpful as compared to something that would calm their bladder from the irritation of the chemicals of the chemo. So it is called phenotyping or subtyping. So in Europe, they were the first to really do this. They have 16 variants that are based on a quote IC or bladder pain, based upon pathology results from bladder biopsies along with symptoms. In Canada, they use a system called UPoint. Germany just passed new IC guidelines, but unfortunately the document's in German, so I can't read it. I don't know if they use it or not. In the United States, we don't have a nationally agreed upon subtyping system. However, I use a system that was created by Dr. Christopher Payne, who ran the IC research program at Stanford University, and I think he nailed it. And this is, for me, as a support group leader and as a wellness coach, the single most successful thing that we do now is we try to understand what a patient's subtype is so that you can focus on the correct therapeutic priorities based upon your unique presentation of symptoms. So let's go over these. So here we go. This is his name, Christopher Payne, the 5 subtypes of IC. He's now in private practice, Vista Urology in San Jose, California, with his wife, Jeanette Potts. They are the leading pelvic pain center in California or on the West Coast. So the 5 subtypes of IC. And let me just say here too, when he, and there's big articles on this on our website, and I have a video on it too. He was really interesting when he introduced his subtyping system because he basically said we should treat IC patients like cancer patients. And I like in my brain going, why the hell are you talking about cancer? There's no connection between IC and cancer. Why would we scare somebody by bringing up cancer? And he said, no. You're misinterpreting this. He said, think about the care that a cancer patient gets. They don't just say you have cancer. They say you have cancer of the left breast that is estrogen dependent type blank, blank, blank. Or they might say you have cervical cancer that's HPV driven. Or me 2 years ago, I had complex endometrial hyperplasia with atypia and a vague architectural complex. In other words, a cancer diagnosis is very, very specific. And because it's so specific, you and your doctor really know almost exactly what to do next. That there is a very clear, intuitive treatment pathway. So for me, with early uterine cancer, it was all about, we knew what to do, a hysterectomy, right? And he argues very, very successfully that a diagnosis of IC provides no intuitive pathway. That both the patient and the doctor really have no clue what to do next. It's like, okay, I guess we can throw you on the Elmeron, whatever. But it doesn't provide an intuitive treatment pathway. So how do we get that? We get that with a more specific diagnosis. And so he proposed 5 fundamental variants of IC, and then just know that there are variants inside variants. So there's probably really like 20 total variants, but we start with these 5 and then we work down. Okay, so variant number 1, subtype number 1 is Hunner's lesions. So these are the patients who have big bleeding wounds in their bladder. So these are the patients whose bladders look like this. Big bloody wounds, and the wounds are so vulnerable and sensitive that if they do a cystoscopy and they stretch them, they bleed like a waterfall. So if you've come out of a hydrodistension peeing blood clots for days, couple of days, the odds are you probably had a Hunner's lesion at some point in time. They might have treated it, but it might have been there. Hunner's lesions are a completely different and unique patient group. And we know that on biopsy results, because when you biopsy a Hunner's lesion, it is filled with inflammation. Whereas all the other subtypes, so this biopsy result, when you biopsy the center of this lesion, profound inflammation, your body is fighting something hard. Whereas if we biopsy this, very, very little inflammation. Now, one of the mysteries about Hunner's lesions is, why do they happen? Like, what the hell is triggering this massive inflammatory response? And now we have a clue, because we have multiple research studies, small research studies, that have linked Hunner's lesions to viral infections. A virus. You know, when you think about a bladder infection, you're thinking about bacteria. But guess what? You can have a viral infection in your bladder too. If you've ever had mononucleosis, we have now found the monovirus Epstein-Barr in the bladders of patients with Hunner's lesions. They've also found the polyoma BK virus, which we all have. It's a normal part of the human biome, but if you are immune compromised, it can get turned on and cause hemorrhagic cystitis. What does a Hunner's lesion do? It hemorrhages, hemorrhagic cystitis. So we got lots of research on that. We even know herpes could be involved as well. So Hunner's lesions, these are the patients who never responded. This is one group of patients who never responded to Elmeron, never. And it makes sense, because if it's a virus, well, how would a bladder coating help, you know? And so it's kind of changing the world of these patients. Hunner's lesion patients respond the best to lesion-specific therapies. So they do best with either injecting a steroid into the center of the lesion, like right here, to fight that inflammation, or they can cauterize it to seal that wound, or laser therapy to seal that wound. And of course, we have the first treatment in history that healed Hunner's lesions in just 2 weeks, called Lyris. And unfortunately, Allergan has that, and Allergan shelved it last year. So here we have a treatment that has healed the worst form of IC in multiple research studies, and we cannot get it. Hunner's lesion patients are very diet sensitive. If you've got Hunner's lesions, they have to be treated with a lesion-specific therapy. The single most common cause of patients with long-term chronic pain and discomfort and or intense pain is patients with untreated Hunner's lesions. And again, I just worked with one last week that had Hunner's lesions. I said, did they do anything? She said, no. I said, are you in pain? She said, yes. And she said, what do we do? And I go, they have to treat it. They didn't treat it. That's why if you're ever going to have a hydrodistension, you always have a discussion with the doctor about what are they going to do with what they find. You don't just want them to diagnose a lesion and back out and not do anything, because you're going to have another hydrodistension to treat them. So you have to have that discussion ahead of time and say, okay, if you find Hunner's lesions, what are your intentions here? How do you plan to treat it? And if the doctor says we're not going to treat it, then don't do the hydrodistension with them. You need to go to a doctor who's capable of treating these. Correct? I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay for the procedure twice. You always, always, always have to have that discussion. Okay, so that's IC subtype 1 Hunner's lesions. Using the pain system. IC subtype 2, bladder wall driven. So these are the patients whose bladders look like this. So this could be chemical irritation. This could be chemo irritation. This could be potentially chronic infection. Who knows? I don't think that they've done they've done the biopsy. You know what? They've done the biopsy results of these, and they generally don't find infection in the biopsy results. But clearly, this is a sign of a bladder that is injured, right? So we know a patient has bladder wall-driven symptoms if they have pain as their bladder fills with urine that is relieved by urination. So the fuller you get, the worse you feel. But as soon as you pee, there's a sense of relief. And that makes sense, because think about it. So here's your bladder, and it's filling with urine, right? And urine is hitting all of those wounds and irritating those wounds. Therefore, the fuller you get, it's like, ow, ow, ow. Oh my God, where's the bathroom? This hurts bad. And then as soon as you pee, bam, urine is no longer touching those wounds and you feel better. So if you have pain as your bladder is filled with urine that is relieved by urination, then we're really going to look at the bladder as the source of that pain. Obviously, that's going to be very true for Hunter's lesions, but that's also very, very true for bladder wall driven. A therapeutic priority for this is to really focus on calming and soothing the bladder, but also trying to understand what could be triggering this. And this is where we have some subtypes. So for example, chemical irritation, diet-induced irritation can do this. Genitourinary syndrome of menopause can do this. Estrogen atrophy can do this. Chronic infection could do this. Chronic fungal infection can do this. Chronic bladder bacterial infection can do this also. And so when you have bladder wall driven, we're always going to try to understand why. And, you know, a lot of women simply don't understand the role of aging and how aging changes their bladders. That your bladder relies on a nice thick coating of mucus to protect itself. And if you're somebody who you've drunk coffee all of your life, and then all of a sudden coffee is irritating you, that's because you don't have a lot of mucus in there anymore because you don't have a lot of estrogen anymore. And your bladder's ability to defend itself is compromised. It's just compromised. So you could get away with the coffee and the sweet tea and the diet soda when you were in your 40s, and you can't get away with it in your 50s. That's not a disease process. That is what happens when you lose estrogen. Your bladder cannot produce that nice thick coating. So that's IC subtype 2, bladder wall driven. So our therapeutic priority here is going to be to protect the bladder. So you're going to be following the diet. We don't want you to do alcohol. We don't want you to do high acids or coffees or anything like that. Please understand that because the bladder has the largest single cells in the human body, it is the slowest to heal. So it takes 2 weeks for one cell to be replaced in the bladder wall. So imagine an extra large pizza and imagine a little tiny pea underneath that pizza. That extra large pizza is a urothelial cell, your bladder lining. If that's damaged, the little tiny pea takes 2 weeks to grow and change shape and fill up that space. And I can actually give you, oh, where is it? Where is it? I have my favorite picture. Hold on a sec. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Let's see if I have it. I got this freaking good picture of a healthy bladder versus a compromised bladder. I just had it out because I was, dang it, where did I put it? Okay. Well, anyway, I don't have it. The bladder wall looks like a beehive. Large cells that look like a hexagon. So you got this extra large cell, and then underneath it, a little tiny stem cell. And that little tiny stem cell grows, adapts, and changes and changes and changes and changes until it fills in the big spot. But while that cell is doing that, it is exquisitely vulnerable to acid. And it was Dr. Anthony Schaefer who talked about this at a conference, urology conference, a federal conference, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where he literally said that 1 cup of coffee is going to destroy the stem cell. So the patients who suffer the worst by far are the patients who still have that 1 cup of coffee a day or that 1 soda a day, because literally you're destroying the next generation of cells. Every coffee puts you back 2 weeks worth of healing. And that's why when you have a bladder injury, we want you off of coffee and soda and everything for at least 6 months. Give your body an opportunity to repair itself before you start introducing strong acids that can impair healing. Okay. So you're going to follow the diet. You're going to be drinking plenty of water to dilute your urine. You're going to be reducing acid. You're going to be perhaps doing bladder coatings, maybe the supplements like Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Cysto Renew, Cysto Protect, Desert Harvest Aloe. If those don't work, then they might move you up to some rescue installations, some bladder installations, and so forth, according to the AUA guidelines. All right, let's go to IC subtype 3. IC subtype 3 is pelvic floor driven. So these are the patients whose symptoms began after a muscle trauma, having a baby, a car accident, a fall, a history of athletics. If you were an ice skater and you fell on your butt all the time, if you were a gymnast and fell on your butt, if you were a football player and took pelvic floor traumas. I was working with a Denver Broncos football player earlier this year who had quote unquote IC, which was very clearly pelvic floor dysfunction from multiple pelvic traumas. So here you have a healthy bladder, and your muscles normally protect the bladder, right? Or they cup and hold the bladder. But when you sustain a muscle injury, what happens? Bam! Your pelvic floor starts to squeeze the bladder. It squeezes the nerves. It squeezes the blood vessels. And so look, if you squeeze your arm, what happens? So look at that. It pushes the blood flow away, and it takes a couple of seconds for the blood flow to come back, right? That's what pelvic floor tension does to the bladder and to the vulva and to other things. So our therapeutic priority for somebody with tight pelvic floor muscles is to restore blood flow. How do we do that? We have to relax the muscles. So now at pretty much every first appointment, when you go to a doctor, what they're going to do is a proper pelvic floor assessment. That means a finger in your vajayjay or your rectum. And they're touching muscles, because that's the only way you can really access those muscles. If they can touch a muscle and reproduce your pain, hallelujah, baby, that is a success. That means they found it. That's exactly what we want. So somebody with pelvic floor issues, they're not going to have pain as their bladder fills with urine. They're going to have pain more after they're done peeing, and their day isn't controlled by urine volume. Their day, their pain, they don't have the extreme highs and lows of urine on wounds that somebody with a bladder wall issue would have. Their pain tends to be steadier. It tends to be duller. It tends to have a burning quality to it, because muscles that are working hard build up lactic acid, and that causes burning. So basically what they're going to be doing is pelvic floor work. They're going to be using hands-on massage. This is not about sticking a probe up where and turning it on and delivering impulses. This is really more about finesse. It's a physical therapist using their finger to touch muscles. And their goal here, so this is kind of a simplistic way of looking at it. So here I've got a lockdown muscle in my pelvic floor. They're going to use their finger. And actually doing this sideways would be better. I just can't turn my arm sideways for you. They're going to be using their fingers, and they're just going to be very gently rubbing along the length of the muscle to try to get it to release, right? Except your muscles go like this. So they're actually working this way. And what's so interesting, I've been doing pelvic floor therapy again, and it's fascinating to me, because she can stick her, so if this is my hip bone and she puts her finger this way, she can rub along the bone. And that's what she has me doing with my thumb sometimes, as I get in there and because they can go all the way to the bone and touch those muscles. It's absolutely fascinating. And it's remarkably successful. So I started having really severe pelvic floor levator spasms after my hysterectomy. I mean, like fist up my vagina, pulling downwards every day for 10 months. Terrible. And it took 3 sessions of pelvic floor work to actually get that to stop. And I can tell when I need it again, right? And so don't underestimate muscle work. Now, listen, some of you out there, you don't want fingers up your you-know-what. I need you to understand that that's how you do it. You can't reach these muscles externally. Now, listen, if you were a victim of sexual assault, sexual abuse, and the idea is absolutely repugnant, you need to be really honest with your physical therapist and say, listen, This is hard for me. I got PTSD. The thought of anybody touching me down there with my history is slim to none. And what they will do is they will start externally to build trust and to show you that it works, show you that things work. But ideally, our goal is to try to be able to get in there internally and do some work also. Okay. Don't be afraid of it. It's interesting. It's fascinating, actually. We have some really good books that can help you understand this. Let us see here. Stay. Okay. Now, if money is an issue and pelvic floor physical therapy isn't covered, what I would tell you to do is at least go once, because you can't fake it here. You're not going to be able on your own to figure out which muscle is the problem. So if you can go to a physical therapist just once for a proper pelvic floor assessment, your goal is to walk out of that appointment with the names of the muscles, so that you can then maybe go to YouTube and watch some videos by physical therapists on YouTube. There are some really good physical therapists on YouTube, but you can also refer to some fabulous books. Ending Female Pelvic Pain by Isa Herrera. And she also has this book for men, Ending Male Pelvic Pain. This book will teach you more in 5 minutes about your pelvic floor and how it should be than any other book out there. And man, I got 3 college degrees. I thought I knew stuff. Boy, did I have to eat humble pie when I read this book. It taught me so much. But the cool thing here too is she gives you lots of things that you can do to get your pelvic floor into the correct position, like this prayer squat. You know, if you start feeling like your pelvic floor is getting tight and you're standing in line in the bank, drop your purse, just pretend you dropped it, and then get down there and squat for 5 or 10 seconds. Because when you squat, it puts your pelvic floor muscles exactly where they're supposed to be, the proper length and location. Another book that you can do that works for men and women is Heal Pelvic Pain by Amy Stein. And she also has a very nice DVD series if you prefer to watch a video. And she does the same thing. She's got lots of exercises in here. This is a favorite one of mine. I love doing that. Good stretches. Here's another one for those of us with SI and glute issues. Holy moly, it's amazing the tension I get in my glute muscles from sitting here and working too long. That's one good thing about the fires is I didn't work, and you know what? My pelvic floor problems went away. And then yesterday I sat for 7 hours, bam, right back. The last book, Interstitial Cystitis Solution by Nicole Kosian. This is the newest book, and this is really the first book which really clearly discusses the connection between the bladder and the pelvic floor and how these trigger each other. And she also has kind of really extensive discussions on what you can do. And I really love the pictures. I mean, the pictures you got, I mean, hey man, it is what it is. The human body is a gloriously beautiful instrument of our life, and we should be protecting it. So she's got exercises and things here too. Alrighty, so if you've got pelvic floor, would you please invest in one of those books? And there's a lot more. I mean, there's videos and DVDs that we have too, but you can't fake it. And for God's sake, don't just start doing Kegel exercises. Kegel exercises are designed to tighten muscles in people who are incontinent. But if your muscles are too tight and you do a Kegel, it's going to hurt you and it's going to make it worse. All right. I see subtype 4 pudendal neuralgia. These are the patients not with a bladder injury or a muscle injury. These are patients with a nerve injury. So their symptoms are very positional. They're fine when they stand, but when they sit down, it hurts, or when they bend over, it hurts, or when they squat down, it hurts. I have a partial pudendal nerve entrapment on my left side, and it flutters. It's a fluttering flicker. In fact, it's just starting right now, which tells me I'm going to have to get up within the next 30 minutes. It's like a buzzing sensation, like right on the inside of my left sit bone. Um, but a pudendal nerve entrapment can also be manifested in the vulva. You might feel a pulling sensation or prickling sensation that you might think is vulvodynia, but it actually could also be relate to muscles to nerves that are compromised. So the question is how are the nerves compromised? And the answer is the nerves are usually compromised by tight muscles. And so their therapeutic priority for pudendal nerve entrapment is to release the nerve. How do we release the nerve? We figure out what's entrapping the nerve. If it's the muscles, then we're definitely going to be focusing on relaxing those muscles. Okay. Hi, Sue. Hi, Gina. The last subtype is my dominant subtype. I'm IC subtype 5 and IC subtype 3, pelvic floor. IC subtype 5, central sensitization. So these are the patients where we often see a familial connection. You've got a family member who has a sensitive bladder or a sensitive gut or irritable bowel. It's characterized by very sensitive skin. We have food sensitivities, not just of our bladder, our whole body. We've been told that we've been sensitive since we were kids. And in many cases, the word sensitive has been weaponized. And think about all those kids where they say, oh, you're just sensitive, get over it. It's like, no, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. If your body is wired to be sensitive, it's about action potentials. You cannot get over how your body is hardwired. So somebody with central sensitization, the hallmark symptom is an incredibly sensitive sense of smell. That you can smell things that other people cannot smell in your homes, and smells drive you crazy. Like we had to spray this house on Tuesday for mites. And that's one of the reasons why I went to a hotel for 3 nights. You want to torture Jill Osborne is you mess with my skin and then you give me something that smells so bad, I scream. It makes me insane to have strong smells. And they sprayed it with pyrethorone or retherine, whatever, which is like essential oils on steroids. Oh my freaking God. So they sprayed it and they were like, yeah, you'll be fine in a couple hours. I like walk into the house. It's like, oh my God. Oh, this is terrible. And it's just like, all right, I'm calling the spa. I'm getting out of here. And my parents, my mom was a smoker, so unfortunately she has no sense of smell anymore. So it didn't bother my parents at all. But me, it's torture. I have right now, I was gone for 3 days. I've got 2 air filters, one in my bedroom, one in the living room. I've got a fan pulling fumes out from underneath from the basement where they sprayed. And I've got 2 ionic purifiers running. And we're going to be doing that for days until I no longer smell a freaking thing. That is life with central sensitization. We also have a really wicked sense of taste. I used to freak one of my boyfriends out because he'd come home from work and I'd kiss him and I could tell him exactly what he ate that day just by taste. My sister is an award-winning winemaker with central sensitization. And she's a brilliant winemaker because when she blends wine, she's got this extra level of taste. I have it too. And so, going and eating with her and tasting things with her is really fun because it's like we get very nerdy and we go, do you taste that? Do you taste that? And everybody else is going, what the hell are you talking about? And we're like, yeah. Get that little bit of chocolate? Did you get that little bit of cherry, whatever, with wine? Also, when she makes wine, she doesn't swallow that much. She just swirls it and spits. She won the highest awards you can win, right? Okay, so anyway, central sensitization is not a disease. It's the landscape. When this research came out, the first research that talked about this running in families, and I just really want you to say that in my 20s, as I was dealing with the IBS and the vulvodynia and all this sort of crap, I really thought I was being punished. I thought it was my fault. I thought I was damaged goods. I thought I was broken. I thought I was unlovable. I was profoundly depressed. It's like, what the feck is, I said feck. I didn't say the other word. I said feck. What the feck is wrong with Jill Osborne? And why every year is there something new? And I really profoundly depressed. I was so frustrating to see all my friends getting married and having babies, and I was at home laying in the fetal position trying to have a bowel movement because the cramping was so bad. Well, um, then we had the first research study out of the University of Maryland that showed that this ran in families. It was like, oh, what? 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 Wait. Well, my mom has this. My sister has this. My grandma. It's not my fault. And then the central sensitization stuff came out, and the nerve sensitization, the neural crosstalk research which explained the biology of it. And it was like, holy hell, this is my life. This explains everything I've ever had to deal with from a health standpoint. The sensitive skin, even now I have prickling in my skin, random. It's like every now and then I get what feels like needles in my skin all over my body. It's like once an hour, down by my ankle, up on my shoulder, or in my back, whatever. And the shame fell away. Not my fault, not your fault. It's the landscape. So if you have central sensitization, the odds are you've already adapted to it. You already know you can't have strong smells in your house. You probably already know you can't use Febreze or scented candles. You're probably also already using tiny doses of medication, half doses of medication, because you're so prone to side effects, right? And the really cool thing about people who have central sensitization is that we are incredibly animal intuitive. I don't get it, but we can be sound sensitive. Like if I hear an animal crying, I cannot ignore it. I got to go find it. A lot of people wouldn't even hear it. For me, it drives me crazy. I got to go figure it out. So it's the landscape. It's the landscape, not a disease process. It's a gift of our ancestors. And it is our job on a daily basis to protect our sensitive nerves. Every tribe needed somebody who was sensitive because guess what? We were the ones who could smell the bad water. We were the ones who could find the foods. I argue that central sensitization, this nerve sensitivity, when it's passed along genetically, is a genetic imperative. Because without it, tribes would die because they would drink bad water. They wouldn't be able to find the food they needed because they didn't have that sense of smell or sense of taste. And so that's my theory on why it happens. Neurosensitivity can also happen after traumatic injury. We call that allodynia, where if you sustain an injury, let's say extreme vulvodynia, you might notice that your skin gets sensitive all the way up to your waist. And that's just the nerves in the area also becoming more sensitive. That tends to calm down though. But for people with central sensitization, it just is what it is. Hello, redhead, Norway, where this is remarkably common. My ancestors from the Arctic Circle. You go back 10,000 years, it was the world, they didn't have chocolate, they didn't have caffeine, they didn't have citrus, they were eating fish and seals and berries. No wonder my body doesn't respond well to chocolate. Chocolate came from Africa. My ancestors had no opportunity to develop defenses against chocolate. Or oatmeal. I can't eat oatmeal. Oatmeal triggers me too. Right? Okay. So there's the Chris Payne subtyping system. So the question now is, what's your subtype? So here's my subtype. I am absolutely IC subtype 5 primary, central sensitization. No doubt about it. It is my daily life, as this week proved when we sprayed the house and it made me crazy. I am also IC subtype 3 pelvic floor driven. And the rare times that I have bladder issues now are usually just come from stress, but also I am now menopausal. My skin is now getting a little bit drier. Elise says here, my family, none of us tolerate spicy food. It burns our mouth and gives us bladder pain. Yeah, I don't do spicy either. I can't do spicy. I just don't do well with it either. You see my face is swollen right there? I had a big pimple there. It's still all swollen. Not that you needed to know that, but anyway. Okay, so that's my subtype. So now your job is to try to figure out what your subtype is. And you might need a doctor's help with a proper pelvic floor assessment. If you've got blood in your urine, a lot of blood in your urine, at some point in time, you're going to want somebody to look in your bladder. Let's see if you got a Hunter's lesion. If you do, for God's sake, treat it. You want to treat it. And so this is truly about eliminating things and really understanding your anatomy first. And that's why, again, I think it's very important when you go get a second opinion that you do not just walk in and say, I have IC. You go in and you talk about your symptoms. Hey, doctor, this is what I did the last time. I feel like there's a fist up my vagina grabbing onto my viscera and pulling downwards. Can you please help me understand what the hell this symptom is? Doctor looks, look at that. You're having levator ani muscle spasms. Or, doctor, I have this really pain. It's always in the same location. It's near on the left side of my near my prostate. It's like the left side of my prostate. Can you please help me understand what this is? And that's one of the other really interesting things about IC patients is we generally don't have spots. You know, most of us, our symptoms are a little bit vaguer. If you've got one specific location that is bugging you, that's where you got to focus your time. You got to focus your time and your doctor's time on trying to understand what the hell is at that location that could be triggering that pain. Could it be an ulcer? Could it be a wound in your bladder? Could it be a trigger point? Could be anything. It could be anything. But we got to figure out what that location is. Lisa says, do Hunter's lesions always bleed? Usually, although in this picture, in this picture, you could look, there's one that's not. So of all of these other ones, you can definitely see the bleeding, but not necessarily in this one. So I'm going to say most of the time, those lesions are probably bleeding to some degree. Courtney says, if there is a possible nerve irritation due to tight pelvic floor muscles, once the muscles are relaxed, does it take a little time for the nerve to calm down? Yeah, but they can calm down. Mine did. I'm not having that. I'm not having, well, again, with the fires, it was so interesting because I couldn't work for basically 2 weeks. So I wasn't sitting here compressing the nerve and I had no vibration, none. And now I've been sitting for 3 days and I feel the vibration again, which is why I have to get up and move around, you know, so nerves do calm down. Rebecca says chronic UTI should not be a subtype bladder wall driven, in my opinion. Infection needs to be properly excluded long before seeing a urologist and getting diagnosed with IC. Well, you know, Rebecca, I don't know if you saw, but this week the American Urology Association released their new UTI guidelines. And there was absolutely no discussion of chronic UTI or next generation testing for that matter. Man, they are sticking to their urine culture theory once and for all. But you know, Rebecca, again, the fact that you guys went to the British Association of Urologists, BAUS, and you made your case and you got them to issue a statement and you got them to consider Dr. Maloney's research is exactly what you needed to do, and it's absolutely fantastic. So, you know, urologists tend to be very conservative. Urology associations tend to be very conservative. It takes time. You know, I mean, it took years for them to even consider pelvic floor, but now we do. We just can't make broad strokes, hon. You cannot make broad strokes here. You cannot say everybody has chronic infection. It does not work. It does not work. Sue says, found out a mass showed up on the 2018 CT scan when they checked for an appendicitis. Oh, Sue! Holy hell, Sue! Sorry, I just zoned on your name there for a moment. So since you've mentioned this, we can talk about this. So Sue is a very interesting case because again, she had quote unquote IC, but when they did a CAT scan, or was it? I don't remember if it was a CAT scan or an MRI recently. They found that she had a mass kind of interwoven among her pelvic floor muscles. And now apparently you just found out that in 2008 they saw it too. Isn't that amazing? So again, that's just another case where we just can't paint broad strokes. Patients are very, very unique. Tracy, what happened to bladder rest? You're trying, we just sold out, but we've got a new shipment coming. Absolutely nothing's wrong with bladder rest. We will have it back. We just put 30 back in inventory in our store, like on Friday. See, hon, we were evacuated from our warehouse. And so not only were they evacuated, they had no power, they had no cell phone, they had no internet. There was nothing that they could do to update our inventory. And so all the inventories went down to zero during the evacuation of bladder rest, bladder builder, and I think even Peora. And so once we could get back in, and then because it was under mandatory evacuation, I couldn't get anybody into our warehouse to count the bottles. We put bladder builder back in. We had 800 bottles of bladder builder. Bladder rest, I think we were down to our last couple dozen, but it's reordered, it's paid for. We should be getting it this week or next week. But let me just take a look here and just see what I've got here with bladder rest. So Tracy, what you can do tomorrow is if you call our 800 line and pick extension 1 sales, Heather should answer the phone. Ask her if she's got any bladder rest, and she'll send it to you if we do. Otherwise, you just have to wait for your next order. But I'm so sorry for the confusion, hon. I'm so sorry. That's what fires do. Molly says, I used to bruise my tailbone every year as a kid. Yeah. I remember breaking the tip of my tailbone off, and I could stick my finger down there and move it around. Deborah says she had physical therapy and it works wonderfully. Awesome. John Lee, a neuromuscular disease and pelvic floor dysfunction is possible. Molly says, I can't just let them touch me. I just can't. Molly, then you start externally. But the fact that you acknowledge and admit that you bruise your tailbone every year says that you probably have profound issues with your levator muscles down there. And so they're going to have to start from the outside in and really work and calm those muscles and build trust with you so that they can hopefully get there eventually. Deborah says physical therapy is great. They charge the first time, then Medicaid paid for it, but you're now 66 years old and they might not pay for it. But the advantage, Deborah, is, and the thing to remember about pelvic floor physical therapy is that the physical therapy appointment itself is not the most important process. It's what you do at home that matters. And having a wand and having the physical therapist teach you how to use that wand is important. Let me get our sample. Hold on. Where is my sample? Let's see. Here it is. So the last ones that we suggest come from a company called IC Relief. And they have 3 different ones. They've got a straight one, and then they've got this one, which has a glass wand that you hold, and then they've got a larger one, kind of longer one if mobility is an issue for you. And so again, what they may have you do is, sometimes they have you kind of go side to side. Sometimes they have you kind of go up with this. Sometimes if you have a trigger point, they might have you push. For me, our emphasis is shallow rather than deep, because that's where I'm holding most of my attention is shallow. And I actually haven't done it in about 3 weeks, and I can tell. So if your insurance won't pay for your pelvic floor physical therapy, if you can pay once just for that pelvic floor assessment and then have them teach you what to do, and then if you could just go back once or twice a year for an update, that would be great, because money is real. I understand that tremendously. Hi, Rhonda. Hi, Becky. Hi, Lori. Annie, I noticed when I became sexually active as a teenager 20 years ago that an orgasm can make my IC pain disappear. My youngest sister is now telling me she has the same relief. I'm going to a urologist after just dealing with it, but I've had a flare for the last 2 months. I'm going crazy. I can't do caffeine, but I do have allergies. So when you have an orgasm, you're having a very, very strong muscle spasm and then a profound period of relaxation. Although we women are different because we tend to go over about 24 hours of fairly mild spasms to help sperm the egg. Annie, that is like the perfect time when going in and not mentioning IC is important. I think it's important to say, "Hey, doctor, when I have an orgasm." Well, okay, no, I got to take that back. Hold on. How would I do that with a doctor? Let me think about that. What I would say to the doctor is that you've had for years symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. But the one surefire way of making you feel a little bit better is to orgasm. And you want to understand mechanically why that happens. What is that about? Is that about muscles relaxing? I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating. And the fact that your sister is the same way, that's fascinating. There's got to be a biological reason why that happens. You do have food allergies, irritable bowel, and rheumatoid arthritis. You've had a flare for the last 10 months. You don't say how old you are, Annie, because remember, you could actually just be dealing with a bladder sensitivity from menopause also. And that might explain your flare. Curtis says, should we avoid monk fruit? I have no idea. I've never had monk fruit. I have to add that to our diet list. That you do a CBD oil that's flavored with monk fruit. I just don't know. I don't know. I have no freaking clue. Angie says, dry needling physical therapy saved me. I couldn't walk before starting. Now I can bend over and touch the floor. Absolutely. So if somebody has a trigger point, then what they can do something called dry needling to try to break that trigger point up and get it to release. See, again, Angie, can you imagine what your life would be like if they had just put you on Elmeron and never talked about your muscles? Can you imagine the suffering that patients must have endured the last 100 years? IC was first written about in a medical journal in England in like 1840, 1850. And they used to treat it with mercury. Oh man, these women were tortured. And to find out, hey, it could just be a simple pelvic floor tension from having a baby, or a tear in the pelvic floor, or a nerve that's been compromised by tight pelvic floor. But can you imagine? You get so much relief from it if that had been denied you. I mean, we really are in a better place today than we were 10 years ago because of this. Dry needling is illegal in California? What? Really? I had no idea. Really? I have never heard that before. Are you sure? Holy hell, it is. It's prohibited by state health boards. The fight between acupuncturists and physical therapists declare war over dry needling. Acupuncturists say dry needling is acupuncture and requires. Oh, it's a turf war. It's a turf war. Dry needling is allowed in 30 US states, but is still prohibited in others. Technique employed a so-called dry acupuncture needle, which physical therapists describe as one without medication, inserted through the skin into the areas known as trigger points. Multiple acupuncturists interviewed by Healthline insist dry needling is simply acupuncture with a different name and is not within a physical therapist's scope of practice. Wow. You know what this is? This is a professional warfare. The acupuncturists don't want anybody else doing it. They want the business. Yeah, I'd like to see an acupuncturist get in through the vaginal wall. They're not qualified to do that. So who the hell's qualified? Wow. I had no idea. Oh man, I got to do an article on that for our magazine. I will email some of my physical therapy contacts and get their feedback on it. That sucks eggs. In July, Nebraska Attorney General Douglas Peterson ruled dry needling is within the scope of practice for physical therapists. Wow. All right. Well, let's keep going. Annie, thank you for enlightening me. I appreciate that. Shirley says, my dad has IC, but not as severe as mine. So does your dad also have sensitive skin? Annie uses earplugs to dull the noise. I do books on tape. I sleep with a book on tape on every night. I can't do it without it because my ears ring also. So Annie says, I can always smell the moldy sponge or moldy clothes on friends or family. Yeah. Or cigarette smoke or pot smoke or hash or anything stinky. Sue has a grape-sized mass on her pudendal nerve. It showed up in a 2018 CT scan. Sue, that's incredible that they never told you about that mass. That is freaking crazy and malpractice, in my opinion. Hi, Lori. Lori says, I'm new to your organization. I love it. And it's very informative. I'm sure you all know the answer to this, but I'm not sure. Can you tell me what kind of symptoms you have of pelvic floor dysfunction? So pelvic floor dysfunction, a downward sensation, feeling like something's falling out of you, an upward sensation, feeling like something's being pushed up inside of you, frequency, urgency, pressure, pain, but usually with a burning quality, because a muscle that's working hard is a muscle that builds up lactic acid. So you can have a vaginal burning with pelvic floor, and you could, anytime movement triggers your symptoms, then we're always going to look at muscles, because movement involves changing muscles. So if you're moving muscles and you start getting symptoms, then that tells us that your muscles are driving your symptoms, right? Deborah says you'd like to get what I just showed you. If you're talking about the IC Relief, it's right in our store. Go over to the IC Network website and just click on shop. Hey, and guys, listen, if you find these support group meetings helpful, it would be really great if you could support us. And the way that you can support us is by becoming a member of the IC Network, which would then give you our fabulous magazine, the IC Optimist, or you can just buy stuff in our store. That's the advantage that we have is we are a health publishing company. Back when I started the IC Network in 1993, my intention was for it to be a nonprofit. I paid for everything for the first 5 years. We've never asked for any money for our website. And then when it was time for us to organize formally, and we did our fund development assessment, there was no money. The ICA had any money wrapped up. There was absolutely no money for another group that focused on IC. And so one of our members said to me, he said, well, you're about giving people information. So why don't you be an information company? Why don't you be a publishing company? And I went, oh, isn't that a cool idea? And so that's what we are. The IC Network is actually a health education company. We're a philanthropic health education company. What that means is 95% of what we do, we give away for free. And our website's free, the support group meeting's free, but we have bills to pay. And so any way that you can support us by becoming a member or buying from us is really, really, really useful to this. It's important. John says, can Estrace be irritating? Absolutely, because Estrace is a brand name that has a shelf life. So both Premarin and Estrace have extra preservatives in it that can make it a little bit more irritating when compared to a compounded preservative-free estrogen cream. But the other reason, other people, and I have to say, I have this conversation all the time. Women who try hormone creams and they burn and they don't do them anymore. And if you put on a hormone cream and you get a burning sensation, that is a direct reflection of the quality and health of your skin. But every subsequent time that you use it, the heat should get less and less and less and less. And so for me, when I started using my hormone cream for the first time, it was quite hot, for 5, 10, 15 minutes. But it took about 2 weeks before it was just like, okay, it was like a warm puff of air. And now, I've been using it off and on for 9 years, 8 years. If I forget to use it for a week to 10 days or to 2 weeks, and I put my estrogen cream on, it's quite warm. But if I keep doing it, it gets better and better and better. If I do it 2 or 3 times a week, it's fine. It's like a little tiny puff of warm air. So when estrogen cream is irritating, we always look at the quality and health of the skin. I was working with a lady last week. She was just afraid to try it. It just hurt so much. And I said to her, listen, your doctor has told you are extremely dry, right? She goes, yes. And I said, if you don't use your estrogen, then your skin is going to progressively get drier and drier and drier. You can use coconut oil and other stuff to at least give it a little bit of moisture, but the advantage of the topical estrogen is that those tissues will use that estrogen to produce mucus. And so sometimes you just got to spend the first 2 weeks being hot down there. But what most patients notice is every subsequent time you use it, the heat gets better and better and better. Unless it's something like Estrace or Premarin where you're reacting to a preservative. Premarin is notorious for that. So we do better with a preservative-free estrogen cream. Erin, I don't remember that. You have to scroll back in the discussion to see who that was. Lori says, I've taken Elmeron for 10 years along with Pre-Leaf, Alka-Seltzer, and diet control. So Elmeron, you got to watch your eyes, hon. If your eyes are changing, then it's going to be very important for you to bring that to the attention of your eye doctor, have your eyes tested, make sure that there's nothing else going on. Angie says, just make sure you are trained on how to use the wand. You could do more damage if you do it wrong. Don't do the 12 or the 6. So, and that's so true. And I hope I said that you use that. The physical therapist will tell you how to use the wand correctly. You don't just shove it in there and start pushing things. Generally, if this was your vaginal opening, it's a clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever. And they will, by using these clock references, tell you where they want you to use the wand. John Lee says estrogen inserted internally. Estrogen is usually inserted vaginally, and or sometimes rubbed on the vulva too, and or at the entrance to the urethra, depending upon a patient's symptoms. And is compounded estrogen better? In my opinion, I do believe compounded estrogen is better because they make it to order. They don't have to throw in the extra preservatives for shelf life. I've used it. My OBGYN 10 years ago was like, Jill, you're super sensitive. You're a redhead. I'm not even going to try you on the other stuff. We're going compounded all the way. Interestingly, he retired, and my new younger OBGYN refused to make my referral to a compounding pharmacy. She said her medical license was at stake, and she wanted me to use estrace. And I refused and got another doctor to prescribe it. You're very, very welcome. All right, my friends. Well, listen, we've been going for 3 hours now. And so I think it's time to wrap this up. So last call for questions, last call for questions, last call for questions. And I want to thank you for letting me talk today because I needed support too after these last couple weeks. Elise says, do I have tinnitus? Yes. My mother, my sister, we all have tinnitus. Yeah, ringing in the ears. It's like being under, right now, it sounds like a very high-pitched electric wires. So annoying, right? Like, come on. So yeah, tinnitus is considered genetic. I really wish they could, like, I noticed that my tinnitus is worse if my neck muscles are tight. In fact, I was just going to get a new neck muscle thing from Sharper Image. I don't. And the other thing that is very, very in common with this group of people who have what we call chronic overlapping pain conditions is TMJ. And TMJ means that you've got tight muscles here. And I have TMJ on my left side for sure. It's always on my left side. Oh, look. And my picture is reversed in this. So it's always on this side. Just so frustrating. It's like if something's going to happen to me, it's always on the left side. Lisa says, I had no problems with yeast until I started estradiol cream. In the Vagina Bible, the author indicates estrogen creams can set you up for yeast. My guide confirmed that it's a catch-22. And I haven't had it. I love the Vagina Bible. Listen, ladies, you want the perfect Christmas gift for your girlfriends and your sisters and your daughters? Get them this. Please, please, please get them this fabulous book. This is like the old Our Body, Ourselves book from 25, 30 years ago. Dr. Jennifer Gunter came out this summer. This is an outstanding gift to give to the women in your life. If you're married and you know what, give it to your partner. Loving this book. I love this book. Where should I apply moisturizer? The labia majora, the perineum between the vaginal opening and the anus, and on the skin around the anus. Try not to get it in the vagina or the rectum, although it is fine if coconut oil or olive oil find their way into those areas. Like, this is so. Bath bombs and bubble bath. Bath bombs, bubble baths give a lot of people pleasure. They are pretty, smell nice, add an extra element of self-care. Many of these products are sold under the guise of wellness, meaning the promise of something medical. Yeah. There is at least one bath bomb that makes a claim that's beneficial for vaginal pH, yada. And then it talks about how bath bombs can irritate some people. I have never been able to do bubble bath, that's for sure. And we're really rebelling against this industry that tells people that they're dirty and that they have to be cleansed down there with douches and stuff like that. Here's an interesting fact on the vagina. The vagina sloughs off its skin every 4 hours. The cleanest part of your body is your vagina. You don't need to put chemicals in there. It is hardwired to deal with penises and whatever else. So rebelling against that industry that says that women are dirty and is profiting off of that is, I think, important for us. The old patriarchal perception. Cheryl says, I can control my IC by diet, however, need to start high blood pressure and can't find medication that I can tolerate. Any advice? You know, Cheryl, you can go over to the IC Network forum. I mean, that's come up several times. I every now and then I use a little bit of low pressure because I can throw PVCs every now and then due to a sunken chest. I have sunken chest syndrome. I know you can't see it because I have boobies, but if you were to look at me from the sides and if I didn't have boobs, what you would see is that my chest is a little concave, and that's genetic. And so I have about a half-inch left of space, a half-inch less space in my chest cavity from here to here. And so if I get gas on my stomach, what happens is the gas pushes right up into my heart and tickles my heart. And I throw PVCs. I get a really strong heartbeat and a really irregular heartbeat. And so I've been able to use low pressure for that very, very successfully. And my prescription, I've had a prescription for 10 years. I've refilled it once. Like it only happens like once every 3 to 4 months. And I only take a quarter of a pill. But every now and then that does happen. So they've talked about that over in the forum. So you can see, so go to the icnetwork.org and go to the patient forum and search for it there. You have to log in. You know, the forum is private. People can't publicly view it, so you'll have to register. And then you might need to wait a day for Donna to approve your registration. If you have any problems, give me a phone call and I can do that for you too, okay? Annie says, can and will a TENS unit help? Sure. Sure, definitely we're trying. The challenge is where do you put the pads? Ending female pelvic pain, I do believe, tells you where to put the pads. Hold on, what did I do with the books? Did I put them back up there? No, I didn't. Okay, there. I flew to London in the middle of a bad flare, and I had my TENS unit on the inside of my legs because, you know, one of the things that a TENS unit can do is it provides a distraction for your brain. And we know that in pain processing, that there's a gate at your lower brain that only lets the most important pain message through. And so you can divert that pain processing. So what I did is I had it on the inside of my thigh. And when my bladder started screaming, I would just turn the TENS unit up. And I got, hey man, you know, 10-hour plane flight, I got there. Let's see. I think she's got in here. Yeah, 224. Yeah, so she describes where you can put TENS unit pads with pictures. See with this one along your bikini line, or this one lower back. So, you know, but again, listen, when you do something like a TENS unit, listen, it shouldn't hurt. If you're using a TENS unit and it hurts, you're going to hurt your nerves. I had a lady, it was very interesting, a nurse up in Montana who was trying post-tibial nerve stimulation, and she was using an acupuncturist because by that, we didn't have urgent PC back then. And so she talked with Dr. Stoller, the guy who invented it. She talked with me. She was a nurse doing it, trying to learn it. And I told her, I said, listen, more is not better. More is not better. You turn the TENS unit up if you're doing it at the ankle until the toes bend out or flare out, and then you back it up to the point that it doesn't hurt. And I told her that multiple times. The other doctor told her multiple times, and she did it anyway. And she ended up with bad nerve damage in her feet. Okay, so and and I can't even say my nerves in my feet are normal. But you know what? It broke me out of a flare, so I'll be happy. Thank you. Laura says, I really appreciate all this info. This has been wonderful, and I feel much better educated about going into these first few appointments and moving toward finding the right treatment. And Laura, just remember that a lot of urologists are unfamiliar with the subtypes. You don't have to say subtype. You can just say you're doing your research and you understand that a patient might have ulcers, or a patient can have muscle issues, or a patient could have fibroids. Um, let me share, I think, one of the most interesting cases with you, just so that you kind of have this insight here. Um, I had a retired internal medicine female doctor that I met locally here at trivia night at our local bar, which I go to every now and then. And so we were all sitting around. The guys had left. There were three of us. There was a nurse, there was me, and this doctor. And she goes, well, what do you do? And I explained that I ran the IC network and worked with patients with pelvic pain. She goes, oh, do I have a pelvic pain story for you? And so what happened to her, she was a runner. She was a big runner, kind of an introvert like me. She enjoyed athletics and just getting out on her own and running, which is something that I used to do that. Anyway, all of a sudden it became painful, and she started having urinary issues. She went to the urologist and her gynecologist, and they all poo-pooed it and when it's all in your head. And it's amazing how incredibly disrespectful doctors are to other doctors. It's stunning, and nurses to other nurses. Medical care providers are mean to other medical care providers who have issues. I'm fascinated and quite dumbfounded by that. But anyway, they told her it was kind of all in her head. Well, then, it was getting a bit worse, and then she was peeing one day, and she felt this need to push, and so she pushed. Out popped in her urine a row of blue polypropylene stitches. And she's like, she felt it coming out, and she stands up, looks in the toilet. It's like, holy mother of God, what the hell is that? And she was a doctor. She knew what that is. It was a row of stitches. It's like, how'd that get there? I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea how it got there. Called the doctor. She felt better. The stitches were gone. She felt better. Well, then she got worse again, and she got substantially worse. So like running was painful, then walking was painful, and she was in deep, deep distress. And she remembered the stitches, and she said, you know what? You guys need to look and figure this out. So they did a exploratory laparotomy like I had. Her belly was filled with polypropylene stitches, the same material in all these meshes that have been recalled. Polypropylene moves. It's strong. It was never meant for the human body. It migrates through tissue. And so it turned out that 20 years earlier, she'd had a tummy tuck after having a baby. And the resident who did the surgery used the wrong stitches internally, and they were literally floating through her belly, attaching to organs, and in this case, had penetrated through her bladder wall. And she goes, I bet you've never heard that before. And I went, well, actually, I have. You're the second patient I've worked with who's had this happen. So there can be lots of different reasons why that bladder starts freaking out. We have to have a very, very open mind. I'm just worried about doctors who, when you say IC, they just immediately think it's all in your head, and they just treat IC out of a medical book, and they give you Elmeron and the diet. It's like, no, there's a really exhaustive diagnostic workup that needs to be done. We need to make sure you don't have fibroids. We need to make sure, got to just go through that basic checklist before making the assumption that this patient has IC. Because our goal here is if it can be cured, we want it cured. And she was cured once the stitches were out, just like the other patient. So carry hope in your heart, Laura. Carry hope in your heart. And I actually broke my jaw too, guys, or I dislocated it very badly. Life is weird, the human body. But listen, there's one thing you can count on with the human body. It is wired to heal. I mean, I can promise you right now that whatever the hell is happening in your body, your body's trying to fix it. It is trying to fix it. If you fell and skinned your knee, you'd have a scab on it tomorrow. That never turns off. That only turns off when you die. The challenge is that we often get in the way. And if you have a bladder wall injury and you're drinking coffee or soda, it's not going to heal. It's just not going to heal with a daily acid wash. Or if you have a viral infection, then we got to deal with that, or a fungal infection, we got to deal with that, or fibroids or endo or all that sort of stuff. But you can always carry hope in your heart. So remember our affirmation. So I'm going to give you 4 pieces of homework. You got 4 pieces of homework. For 15 minutes, I need you to do something for your spirit and your soul. Whatever it is, go sit outside in the sunshine, go to church, listen to whatever, read your favorite religious book or read your favorite book or whatever. Just 15 minutes, close your eyes and try to give yourself a little bit of peace here. No blame, no shame. You're no different than someone who was hit by a car, guys. You're hurt. I don't want you carrying any weight on your shoulders. I don't want you to think you're damaged goods. I don't want you to think you're flawed. I don't want you to think you're unlovable. I don't want you to think that you're a bad person or you're a bad mother or a bad wife or a bad daughter or sister or whatever the hell. You're hurt. And the amazing thing is if a family member was hurt, if a family member was hit by a car, you'd run out of the house, you would cup their head in your lap, you would call the ambulance, you would ride in the ambulance, you would go to the hospital, you would spend the night with them in the hospital, you would do everything you could for them, you would bring them home, you would fix them their favorite foods, you would turn the TV channel for them, and you would love on them like they have never been loved before. Am I right? And yet, why is it that when we have pelvic pain, we don't deserve the same care? Man, you know what? You need love and support. Ask for it. You've done nothing wrong. If you need it, ask for it. And yeah, sometimes you got to fight for it. I got to tell you, you met my dad. You know, I mean, he paid for me to get my first 2 degrees. And yet he doesn't listen to me at all for my pharmacology and my chemistry, but in the end, you deserve love and support. Okay, so 15 minutes, do something to give you comfort. For 15 minutes, I need you to do something for your bladder or your pelvic floor. Would you please go do your exercises, which I have to do tomorrow morning? Come on. Don't be passive aggressive. Do what you need to do. If you've got pelvic floor exercises to do them. If you've got bladder stuff to do it. If you need to drink water, for God's sake, drink some water. Hydrate yourself. Don't, come on. Passive aggressive doesn't work here. This is all about wound care. We got to help the bladder heal, and the bladder needs nice dilute urine to make that happen. For 15 minutes, I need you to do something for your noggin. Come on now, improve your knowledge. Nobody could ever tell me this is in my head. I will smack them down with research, and I want you to be able to do the same. And so you know what? Subscribe to our magazine, read some articles. Read an article a day. Go to the National Library of Medicine. Read an article. But Facebook doesn't count. Social networking, YouTube. I'm sorry. Some of the, oh God, there are some crazy YouTube videos on IC too. Listen, if somebody's promising you a quick cure on YouTube, please don't watch it. I promise you that when we have breakthroughs, and if we have that, I hate it when people use the word cure. You don't cure an injury, you heal an injury. We cure disease. So if you've got IC subtype 1, Hunter's lesions, viral infection, that is a disease that we want to try to cure. Viruses are very, very hard to cure. Bacterial infections are potentially curable, as Rebecca has testified to in the Facebook chat here. But you don't cure a pelvic floor injury. you heal a pelvic floor injury. And it's very helpful if you kind of change your focus and start thinking about how can I help a wound heal? And it helps you make better decisions, especially about food and stuff. Okay, your last piece of homework is my favorite piece of homework, and that is, would you please, please, please bring laughter into your life? Watch some funny videos. I do it every night for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. When you laugh, your brain minimizes pain. It's part of how the brain processes pain. If pain is accompanied by tears and anxiety and catastrophizing, your brain is going to intensify that pain because your brain doesn't quite understand that pain and thinks it might be life-threatening. But if that pain is accompanied by laughter, your brain goes, oh, this might be okay pain, and it will minimize it. So I need you to start laughing again. Watch a Jerry Lewis. For those of us who are old timers, come on, watch a Jerry Lewis movie. I watched a Cary Grant movie the other night. It was pretty cool. Watch cat videos. Just watch funny stuff. I don't want you reading icy stuff all day, every day. I don't want you reading icy groups all day. In fact, we had one really sad case of a lady who was her case was so severe, and she was not leaving her bedroom, and she was reading Facebook all day and trying all these bladder things. And then she finally reached out to me, and we were able to get her to a real pelvic pain expert. You know what? She had a nerve entrapment. She never had a bladder problem. She had a nerve entrapment. All the suggestions she got, Facebook, complete waste of time. Reckless. Damaged her. Getting a proper diagnosis, working with the right people is important. Okay? So social networking, to make your friends. I've got great friends that I've met online and through Facebook and through our website, and I love you all dearly. But when it comes to information, ask an expert. Okay? All right, my friends. I will see you later. So we'll try to get back on a regular schedule. I almost started the Twitch stream today, but I just wanted to hang loose and let it all hang out today. So I didn't try to implement new software today. All right. So in the future, we're going to be broadcasting on Twitch, twitch.tv. So I can do screen shares and stuff like that and show videos and stuff like that. All right. So that's coming up very, very soon. See you later, alligator. Be well. Big giant hug. And remember your affirmations. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Every day in every way, my life is getting better and better and better. That which is done for me, let it be done. That which is done for you, let it be done. That which you do for yourself, do it. Be bold. Be bold, and mighty forces shall come to thy aid. Use your affirmations, whatever they may be. All right. I will talk to you later. Be well. Goodbye, Facebook. All right, my YouTubers. You always get the last few moments. Lisa, Elise, Carolyn, Curtis, Alan. You guys are awesome. Eileen, Greg. I wish you the best. And work on your noggin. Lisa said, I think they never place a needle correctly for me PTNS. The pain is always at the needle versus the vibration of well, there shouldn't even be vibration at the bottom of the foot. According to Dr. Marshall Stoller, Lisa, you know the needle is placed correctly. The needle is placed perfectly if the big toe bends down. The second level is if the outer toes flay out. So if the toes go like that. And if there's pain at the needle, it's to take it from somebody who did it for a year. That's not a good sign. Well, that was the thing, is that when Urgent PC came along, they did not believe that needle placement was as important, whereas Dr. Stoller, with the Stoller afferent nerve stimulator, for him, needle placement was everything. And he did needles in both ankles, and then we put TENS unit on both ankles, and whichever ankle had the best response, that was we removed the other one, and we just did that side. And I had my big toe out of 12 sessions with him, at least 10 times, the big toe came down. But there's finesse to it, you know? I mean, I don't know if I can. Okay, so I was going to try to bring my ankle up here to the screen, but that wasn't going to work. So let's see. Okay, so if oh God, how do I do this? So if this is a spot above the ankle bone, God, this is hard. Hold on. Let's see if I can contort myself. Okay. So look. Oh, look, these are my Hokas. Lisa, do you know about Hokas? I love these shoes. Okay, so look, here's my ankle bone. So it's 3 fingers up above the ankle bone. So it's going to be in this area, right? But it's actually then, and where's my tattoo? So look, here's my tattoo. So 3 fingers above the ankle bone, but then it's down about an inch, right? See, look, is that the tattoo? No, that's a tattoo right there. I don't know what that is. Okay. And then when they put the needle in, it's not straight in. He did he went downward. So he went downward and then inward. He had a very, very specific way of putting that needle in. And he was a master. Oh, do I love the Hokas? Oh, girl. I got to tell you, you know, I have no fat pads on my feet anymore from, you know, being a tennis player for so long and working out so long. And so, in fact, I tried to wear some SAS. I tried to buy some SAS slip-on shoes, like Birkenstocks. I lasted an hour before my bones in my feet were hurting, and they hurt for a week. I have to have a ton of padding. And so these are, so the website's Hoka11, and they have 3 different cushions and then 3 different stabilities. So I think these are the Bondi 6s, and they're plush. Which one are these? I was doing the Arahi 2s. I've got 3 pairs of Arahi 2s. And then after this stupid SAS thing, I had to get something super, super. And so, yeah, these are the Bondi 6s, Bondi 6. Live in these shoes. Love, 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 love. Like, I would wear these out on a date. I would wear them dancing. You know, we didn't know all the damage we were doing to our bodies when we were athletes, right? If I knew I was destroying the fat pads in my feet, I would not have spent 10 years doing Stairmaster, which is what the orthopedic surgeon said broke them up in the first place. So yeah, Hoka 11's favorite. So Hoka 11, so I was wearing all last week, and during the fires, I was wearing my Hoka 11s, and then I was wearing my 11 by Venus Williams tracksuits to sleep in. Oh, I got to show you one other thing. Hold on. I got to show you one other thing. Thank you, Donna. Oh, Donna, I'm sorry. Thank you for coming, Donna. I missed you earlier when I scrolled up. My skin is so freaking sensitive now that I have trouble. Aren't they? Yeah, man, they're totally addicted. I can barely wear cotton, and God, for like the seams under the arm here, if those seams have polyester or nylon thread, I'm toast. I am absolute toast. I cannot. I have to wear some of my shirts inside out because I get so irritated here. So I just bought on Amazon these pajamas, and they're rayon, and they use rayon thread. And oh my God, they're fantastic. This whole skin sensitivity thing is crazy. The brand is, you got to get some of these. Echo Hour. I love these pajamas. Love, love, love them. So, just the little things to help us get through the day, right? Just the little things. All right. Well, I guess I need to go take a walk. I could talk forever, but I will see you guys later. See you, Donna. See you, Lisa. Bye, everybody. Wait. Oh, it didn't work. Phew.